A very good morning, distinguished guests, members of the bar, members of the Fourth Estate, comrades in civic engagement, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's Rnblive public engagement session hosted by the Uganda Law Society. I am by the name Robert Benon Jirua. I am a legal officer in charge of litigation in the Rule of Law Department. It is my singular honor to welcome you to this place. Thank you so much for joining us. We would like to also acknowledge the members of the bar and the public that are joining us online. This is a hybrid session and interaction. We take cognizance of those that are joining us online, especially on X, Zoom, and YouTube. Thank you so much for making time. The Uganda Law Society, as we are here, is established under the ULS Act, and our mandate under Section 3, C, and D asks of us to protect and assist the public in matters touching on the law, promoting the administration of justice, upholding the rule of law, and assist the government and courts in all matters affecting legislation and the legal system. It is from this mandate that today we come to you to discuss not necessarily matters that are not important, but matters that are necessary. As we commemorate the World Press Freedom Day in its belated form, because it was on the 3rd day of May 2026, we gather at a time that with journalism across the world, and of course indeed in Uganda, is at crossroads and continues to confront very critical questions regarding freedom, safety, accountability, access to information, and also especially the democratic space. This year's global and national reflections remind us that press freedom is not a privilege granted to journalists. Rather, it is a democratic safeguard for society itself. When journalists speak, citizens are informed. When citizens are informed, accountability thrives. And when accountability thrives, democracy breathes. Today, we're here to honor the work and contribution of one of the journalists in this country that is very professional and has had a very symbolic journey in regard to the resilience, courage, public service, and the enduring importance of storytelling that helps to shape national consciousness. We are celebrating her work, but also the other work of all the other journalists who form the Fourth Estate, a very important arm that ensures democracy and indeed the rule of law in the country. Today, we intend to ask very many questions in regard to the shrinking and expanding spaces of media freedom, the relationship between the state, the media, and the law, the rise of digital journalism and misinformation, the safety and independence of journalism, and the future of journalism in a constitutional democracy. So today, as lawyers, journalists, students, activists, and citizens, we must ask ourselves, what becomes of justice if truth itself becomes afraid? There is an African proverb that says, until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. Journalism gives society the opportunity to hear not only from the hunter, but also from the lion. Today's discussion will be fearless, constructive, reflective, and ultimately transformational. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Our program for the day is going to flow as follows. We're going to hear the national anthems or join in singing the national anthems, after which we shall have an opening prayer from within the building, and after which we shall hear from the Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Law Society with welcome remarks, after which we shall hear a few speeches from the distinguished guests that we have here with us, whose protocol is going to be laid by the Chief Executive Officer in her remarks. And thereafter, we shall be listening into a panel discussion in which distinguished guests of different backgrounds, especially in the journalism fraternity, are going to help unpack the state of journalism in Uganda and in the world over. After that, we shall have a plenary session, after which we shall have a vote of thanks and closing remarks. It is my honor to welcome you to the building. May we please rise to our feet to hear the national anthems. Thank you.
Ilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike, umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you so much. May you kindly take your seats as we welcome Miss Vanessa to give us an opening prayer for the day to start. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. I'm called to Senior Vanessa. We're going to pray. Lord Jesus, we want to thank you for today. We want to thank you for the gift of life. We want to thank you for each and everything that you have done for us, King of Glory. We do not take it for granted. Lord, as we are here for this session, may you bless us, may you bless the speakers, and may everyone be blessed in their own capacities. In Jesus' name we've prayed with thanksgiving. Amen.
Thank you so much for that prayer. We bless the name of the Lord for thus far that we have come. I love the faces that are before me and those that are online. Even if we can't see you, we're believing in the Lord for your well-being and enjoyment for the next few hours. Right about now, would like to welcome Miss Apio Afra, who is the head of Department Rule of Law, who is going to read out and to ask the remarks by the Chief Executive Officer. Thank you.
Our distinguished guests today, Mr. Peter Bernhardt, Dr. George Lugalambi, Ms. Dorothy Doreen Nalumansi, Mr. Derek Wandera, Ms. Irene Abalo, Ms. Joan Balese, Ms. Carlton Nakamya, the Governing Council of Uganda Law Society, our members of Uganda Law Society, members of the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Apio Afra. I'm the head role of law, Uganda Law Society. My chief task this morning is to read the opening remarks of the CEO, and I'll proceed to do that verbatim. On behalf of the Uganda Law Society, I warmly welcome you to today's Rnblive, weekly press and public engagement. Today's RNB is one of a kind. We join the world to belatedly commemorate World Press Freedom Day under the national theme, Promoting Press Freedom for Human Rights, Development and Security in Uganda. Press freedom is not merely a professional concern for journalists. It is a constitutional and democratic issue. A free, independent, and safe media is critical to the protection of human rights and the promotion of accountability and national stability. In recent years, and particularly during the recently concluded election period, the country witnessed disturbing reports of journalists being assaulted, intimidated, unlawfully arrested, and having their equipment confiscated while carrying out their professional duties. Such incidents undermine not only media freedom, but also the public's right to access of information. When journalists are silenced, society loses an important watchdog, and this weakens the nation's democracy. Journalism demands courage and sacrifice. Journalists often find themselves at the center of riots, political unrest, conflict situations, and other volatile environments. They take significant personal and professional risks so that citizens may remain informed and society remains accountable. For this reason, the Uganda Law Society recognizes journalism not merely as a profession, but as a noble public service. An empowered fourth estate is indeed an empowered nation. Today, the Uganda Law Society is also particularly intentional about shining a spotlight on women in journalism. Women who continue to break barriers and report from some of the most difficult and dangerous spaces. We honor their resilience, bravery, and contribution to women journalists whose work continues to shape public discourse and strengthen democratic participation in Uganda. In a special way, we recognize Ms. Dorothy Nalumansi for her courageous coverage during the last election period, where she delivered impactful print and audiovisual stories despite operating within highly intense and risky circumstances. As the Uganda Law Society, we reaffirm our commitment to defending constitutional freedoms, including freedom of expression and media freedom. We also continue to call upon all state and non-state actors to uphold the rights, dignity, and safety of journalists at all times. As we engage in today's discussion, may we collectively reflect on the kind of society we seek to build, one where journalists can work freely, safely, and independently without fear of violence, intimidation, or censorship. I thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to a meaningful and impactful discussion. Now, I take this singular honor to invite Mr. Derek Wandera, the CEO, New Swift Publications. You're welcome, sir.
Good morning. It's a really big privilege and honor for me to be speaking to you this morning. My name is Derek Wandera. I am the Chief Executive Officer of NewsSwift Publications that Dorothy Nalumansi works for. I also have a team in this building with whom I work. Madam Delilah is seated right behind there. Can you start on? She's my deputy. So I'll begin my speech by standing on the protocol in the house and saying, welcome to this morning. I'll speak a few things about Dorothy, her journey up to where she is now. Dorothy works as the head of digital for NewsSwift, but she's also our senior political reporter who has stood out in reporting about human rights, elections, and protests. In the last election, we made a very big decision to deploy her to cover the most political side of this country, and that is the National Unity Platform, where she moved for more than 120 days with the candidate, the president of the NUP, Robert Kyagulanyi. Many of us know him as Bobby Wine. Dorothy stood out in the way she did her work. She was very consultative. She was always seeking advice from us who had deployed her. NewsSwift is a very young media house. We have been stationed at Ndundu Complex in Chisasi, but we are transitioning to a better place and bigger place. We are making 1.5 years in our business after starting last year. We've made tremendous strides in making sure that we train journalists, our young journalists especially, many of whom are just coming from university, training them in digital and most especially print journalism. We have a website, we have X, we have YouTube, we have TikTok, Facebook. And this is where we relay all our information. And we are trying to do this because we want to help young journalists come and do their work in the most friendly way. I started out as a young journalist after university, entered Daily Monitor, almost wobbling in. You do not know how to find locus. You don't know how to strengthen yourself in that very huge newsroom. Thank God, I was able to find my footing as early as possible. Right now, I'm one of those journalists they call senior, but not by age. It's by the things I've done. I sit on one of the most political talk shows, and probably the oldest in this country, called Capital Gang, to talk about current affairs, talk about politics in the country, but also across the region. And the moderator always calls me young veteran journalist. It's because I found locus, and I found my strength and footing in the newsroom quite early, thanks to some of the friendly faces I found there, my editors and staff. At NewsSwift, our focus is to uplift the people like Dorothy Nalumansi, to make sure that we identify what their passions are, help them and groom them in those directions. We are a team of about 19 people doing really crude journalism, making sure we go to the deeper ends of this country to look I think our website, if there is any new website, is the most updated website with very topical stories. Our YouTube has a lot of engagement and X. And this is because we bore a vision, myself and Delilah, bore a vision that we need to help our fellow young journalists who come into a newsroom like Daily Monitor, and because of the politics, not politics per se, but because of the people who are there very, very senior, they don't have time for the young people. We want to widen space for the young journalists who are just coming from the universities. And we bring them in, train them, most of them as interns, help them know what real journalism is. In my experience as a journalist, I've realized that school can only give you, if at most, if you're very lucky, gives you about 30% or 40%. 60 or 70, you'll find it in the newsroom, but in the field as well. So who teaches you about this 40? I mean, who teaches you about this 70? It's real life in the field. So for us, we want to help be a conduit between the real field and the universities. Bring in young journalists, train them in the most basic way, such that they can get acclimatized with the situation in the field, such that when you throw them the deeper end, they will be able to go and be able to deliver work. Dorothy Nalumansi is just one of the people we are working with, but she has stood out exceptionally. When I was having this conversation with the president of ULS about 3 or so months ago, he pointed out that you have groomed someone that has become very strong. And I think she's worth celebrating during the World Press Freedom Day. I said, oh, that's very nice. So we have not had a conversation with him. We've had conversations, but not really about that, until a few days ago when he told me, this is the time, prepare, let's celebrate Dorothy. And I find this as a very big opportunity for Dorothy to showcase her work, for Dorothy to encourage another young reporter, another young journalist out there, that as we are doing work, we might not be seen, we might not seem to be seen, or we feel no one cares about us, but there are many people who are following our work out there that are going to call us on big podia like this one to come and relay what we've been doing. Most of the pictures that you're seeing around were taken during her time in office, I mean in the field. And I know that she will be able to talk about them, probably where she took them from, where they took those pictures from. She's a person of courage. She's unwaveringly very courageous, and nothing can stop her. One time, I would go to the field to check on them because there were 2 of them. We deployed, her and the photographer called Shafiq. I would once in a while go to the field to check on them. This one time when I was in the field, she was filming something, and a police officer came and almost grabbed her phone and almost slapped her, because that officer had pepper sprayed the car where they were seated, and all of them came out almost failing to breathe. And I witnessed this. I had to make interventions. And that day, another journalist was beaten from BBS Terefina. His head hit on a van several times because this particular police officer wanted him to delete the footage that he had. And that was the same day. So I caught Dorothy on that day, and the journalist, the BBS Terefina journalist, and I looked for the commander of that operation. Thankfully, I have quite a number of contacts in the security circles, but also in the police. So I called, and I was given the number of the operations officer there. And I went and told him, we've been in very, very many boardrooms speaking about safety for journalists. And I said, we need to observe what we've been speaking in the different, on the different tables. We've been calling for safety for journalists. We've been asking security to respect the work of journalists. So what is this that's happening? Trust you me, the commander almost knelt down to say sorry. And I know for sure that not many people have the access to these people. If I wasn't in the field on that day, probably everything would have been swept under the carpet and we would have gone away just complaining. But on that day, I told the commander that now one thing I'm asking is that just make sure that every journalist that is on this trail is safe. And the commander assured me. And trust you me, there were not very many cases of such. So Dorothy points to people who can go an extra mile to get the best of the shots, to get the best of the stories that you've sent. And she's a woman. We appreciate women in journalism. We appreciate women who stand such conditions. There's a video she will show you where we were in Iganga. Immediately after the rally ended, they started shooting aimlessly. And I know you people know that we lost a life in Iganga that was put in the papers. But I, for one, as an investigative journalist, I went back there and I found out that actually 3 people died on that day. 2 of them suffered to bullet wounds, and 1 was a 7-year-old who was trampled over in a stampede. And on that day, as those bullets were going up, many of us were finding the nearest cars that we can enter under. You know you have to enter under a car. Dorothy was with her phone recording. Such courage. Bullets literally flying over her camera. I don't know to where. And that's how courageous she is. And if the world misses out on such a person, then the world would be sick. Thankfully, Uganda Law Society has stood out and said, we want to celebrate such people. It's that courage that we are looking at. It's that courage that we need to. I am a senior journalist. I have covered 3 elections in this country. I probably have done the most problematic stories to our government. But the courage with which Doreen brings to us is so special, especially to the fraternity of journalism. And without being very prejudicial, she has been trained by the best, I guess. Yeah. So I have made sure that Dorothy steps into the deepest waters of journalism, sticks her leg there, sticks her foot there, and leaves a mark. And trust you me, from today or even tomorrow, this mark that she has put up will remain and will go on for life. I want to invite Dorothy to come and just help us understand these pictures, because we weren't there, I wasn't there. She only used to call me, I've been stopped by an officer, I cannot continue, I cannot proceed. What do? I get my phone, I call security, and they call the operations officers, they let them go. That was my job. And then I was always looking out, what story have you done today? So she would go with her cameras, film, send videos, send updates, but also at the end of the day, write a story for the website. Huge work. She would go many, many hours without eating, but she was there. Probably one of the few female journalists in the country that covered that election from day one to day last. I welcome you, Dorothy. Maybe Needless to say, Dorothy is also my wife.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Protocol observed. My name is Dorothy Nalumansi, like I said, like everyone here knows. I'm a bit nervous, you know, us people behind cameras, this is what happens to us all the time when we stand in front of people. But yeah, I welcome you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for appreciating the little I put on the journalism. I would like to start by thanking the president for giving me this opportunity to present my work. Appreciate me for all they've done for journalism. In most cases, it's not working. Why or is it I feel like, especially that I am covering the National Unity Platform, and I always say it's the love I have for journalism that keeps me going. Amidst the intimidation, the violations, it's the passion for journalism that keeps me going. And today, I don't have a lot to say. I'm not a woman of many words. But it's my passion, and I'm glad that I'm here today to talk about it and to talk about the work I've done in the field. My husband has just said that I have to talk about the pictures, some of the pictures and the videos, because I mostly do broadcast. I was thinking that it will be aired such that you're able to.
Yes, they are going to be aired. The IT is just working on it.
There are many pictures, and some I may not even recall the exact places where they were taken from.
There we go. They are there.
Like that video, you see the police officers are shooting right, like direct to the people, because if they weren't shooting at people, at least they wouldn't be shooting direct. But amidst that, I had to capture that because I wanted the world to know what was really happening in the field, the things that were being done by the police officers, because yes, this is our role as journalists. That lady was hit by a patrol car as we're heading to Mukono, because she was putting on a red t-shirt and she was supporting. And those are some of the things that happened throughout the field. We saw bodies, we saw blood, and all sorts of violence. And that is just one of them. Yeah. So that is the video he was talking about. That was Iganga, where a life was lost, as recorded by the government or police. Those officers, the military guys, were shooting at people because they probably didn't want Bobi Wine, the new president, to head to Iganga town. And I don't think there are very many videos like that, or there is a lot of content of that sort where we even have lost lives. But I managed to capture that. Yeah, thank you. That's a video. That officer was he pepper sprayed our car, and whenever I was trying to explain to people that this is the person who pepper sprayed the media car, they were they were misunderstanding him, or
That's a journalist.
yeah, that's a BBS journalist who recorded him pepper spraying the car, and he was being beaten because they wanted him to drop the footage that he had recorded as they were trying to terrorize journalists in the vehicle. And that officer didn't want anyone to capture him. There is a video as I was trying to record him, like, because I wanted the world to know. I wanted the people to know the person he is, or the person who did whatever. That's a video. And he confronted me, asking me why I was doing my job, because I was dressed as a journalist, and I told him I'm here to do my job the same way you're here to do your job. And he was threatening, and yeah, that's a confrontation. Those are the things. That is just a snippet of what happened in the entire field ever since we started the campaigns. And I won't say I'm the most courageous to cover all that, but it's the passion, like I've said in the first place. And I would like to call upon all journalists out there who think that this is not made for them. Probably they should be in offices waiting for what us in the field have to bring to the newsroom. We need as many female journalists as possible. Sometimes there are places a male may not be able to access, but it would be easy for a female journalist. That video, that is where I normally work from. It's on top of a vehicle, and that is my that was my workstation for the 3-4 months I was in the field. And I'm here. I mean, I didn't die. Yeah, so to everyone who is out there thinking that, how will I even do it? Is it even possible? Yes, it's possible. Because the world needs us. The world needs like as many female journalists as possible in the field. That was, as Bobby Wine was heading to Mubende, they had blocked him, as you see the blockages behind. They didn't want him to proceed. And they almost knocked me down as I was doing that PTC. So I would like to encourage journalists, especially female journalists, to please take it to the field. Yeah, we need as many of you as possible, because where there is a female, one day Bobby Wine said that whenever he sees one female, he sees like 5 men in that one female. I believe it's the same thing with journalism. Yeah, please, let's take it to the field. Don't be intimidated. Like I've showed you that, and I'm still here. So I would like to encourage as many of you as possible. That is all I have to say today. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here with us to celebrate my work. Thank you so much.
That's Dorothy. Some of these things I had to speak about. I've covered 3 elections, like I said, probably one of the most celebrated journalists when it comes to writing. But trust you me, when I'm in the field, you'll never see me in front of a gun. I stay in the car and observe, come and write the best story, but the person who has gone through all that probably may never be seen anywhere, because they are holding a camera, they are behind the camera. If you're lucky to hear their voice, so be it. But those people really need a lot of encouragement. Those people really need a lot of support. I called her on average 120 times a day when she was in the field. She became very irritated while I was calling her all the time. But I knew what was there, because I've been there. You know, just a minute in journalism, in that kind of situation, is a very long time. Things can change drastically in just 1 second. You know, we've suffered a lot of intimidation. We've been arrested. I've been in the first election she covered in 2021. We were arrested. We were together, like 6 journalists. All of us were taken in for a number of hours. I was released. She stayed in prison for about 3 days, you know. But even when this election came, she still didn't relent. She went back to report. We need as many young female journalists in the field as possible. By the way, sometimes when it's our female who is in front there, sometimes the gunmen would spare them. Now, like the other BBS Telefina journalist, as a man, you get hit anytime because you are facing a man to man, you know, man to man. But courageous young female journalists always offer us protection, by the way. I worked with, she's not yet here, Carlton Scovia Nakamia in 2021, another seasoned journalist. And when she was picked, we were picked at the same time, but she was released earlier than myself. I had to test the cells and then came back after hours, you know. But we need those courageous women. We need them every other time. And I'm very happy to see Irene Abalo, my other senior journalist. You know, she has suffered a lot with me. She has taken many of my bullets, many of my beatings, and I'm always proud for the person she has become, the person that she is. You're very most welcome. Thank you. I think I will end here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, our young veteran journalist and our gangster. The guys we always listen to on Saturday at 10 a.m. on Capital FM. We have put a face to the name, and we are much more honored to have you here to especially help us celebrate Miss Dorothy, Doreen Nalumansi, whose story has been very captivating. You can imagine what it means to be out there in the field whilst you are a lady. But again, the gangster told us another secret, that he is a husband to the lady. We are celebrating. A round of applause for the couple. That's number one. But he also said that he used to call her 120 times or more. So we're asking, in what capacity were you calling her? Were you calling as a wife, or you're calling as a staff? We don't know, and we wouldn't want to ask those questions. But thank you so much for being such a boss. I want to imagine her story in as a staff. It's a little different from the rest. I can't say much. Let's move to the next. But also, would like to thank you so much, Mr. Derek Wandera, for the path that you have created for these kind of ladies. Because for us at the Uganda Law Society, that is our dream. To see young, able, talented professionals growing out of the shed of their bosses, and that is exactly what the Uganda Law Society does with our different mentorship programs and internship programs. We are always taking in students from different universities and various professionals as well to come and do their work over here. So we want to take that that gesture of yours as very noble, and it speaks so much into the confidence that you have exuded about the journalism, and of course the discourse that we know, like he mentioned, Miss Irene Abalo is here. We've always also heard a lot about her and the things that she has been doing, and she'll be able to speak to us over time. But ladies and gentlemen, that has been one of the sessions that we had to us, and we would like to pick up from what Miss Doreen, Dorothy Nalumansi has been doing, and you can clearly see that she has been going through so much, but that is her passion. You know, it is first about the passion, and clearly you can see being out there and facing those officers has not been an easy task, and that is just the election part of it. Imagine there is so many other activities that are covered by journalists, and being at the forefront as a lady while needing to give feedback to your boss without any time lags, because what I'm aware of is that information is always required on the spot. live coverage, especially about the elections. The consultative and engaging aspect about her is something we're very proud of, and we would like to thank Mr. Derek Wandera for the mentorship, but also, more importantly for the day, our Mugole, Miss Doreen, Dorothy, Nalumansi is one to reckon with. Thank you so much for your endeavors. You speak confidently, and we would like to use your example to speak to the other ladies who are watching us, especially the lawyers who we have here with us online, especially those that are even much more listening into us. It is about the confidence, and nothing else could have been done beyond bringing upon one very strong-hearted and thick-skinned, as they say, the journalists are thick-skinned. You're out there in the weather, you're out there, you're only dressed up with that gear, but you know, you're facing guns, you're facing humiliation, you're facing very, very unbecoming situations. But for you to come back every day and continue to go, sticking your leg, sticking your arm, is something that we cannot take lightly. We would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Radical New Bar Governing Council, led by Isaac K. Semaka, the Senior Council, to thank you, Miss Doreen, Dorothy, Nalumansi, for your tremendous work. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That has been the celebration of the lady in the boots of journalism, but also towards that, we are going to listen to remarks that speak into the lady we are talking about. You know, the Mogole cannot speak and then she's left to go bare. We need to hear some good things, some flowers, some hard challenges that some people have been experiencing with her. And very, very interestingly today, we have with us an individual that is going to give us remarks about different individuals that are going to give us remarks about Miss Dorothy, Doreen, Nalumansi, and one of them being the first without any necessarily look into the order is going to be Honorable George Musisi, who is going to be speaking on behalf of the President of the National Unity Platform, Honorable Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me Honorable George Musisi, the MP-elect for Chira Municipality.
Thank you, my brother Benon. Since I'm representing the president, I thought you were going to say His Excellency, but the President, Uganda Law Society, the Council, and the entire leadership, the Rule of Law Department, my sister Afra, and everyone, the panelists, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I stand here to join my voice in celebrating courage, in celebrating freedom of the press and expression, and in celebrating someone who has done it so excellently. I don't think we have had so many celebrations. First of all, celebrating World Press Freedom Day from the angle of not only free media, but also from the angle of a person who has done media journalism in very tough times. I first of all bring the background of someone who has seen people like Dorothy suffering firsthand the brutality of the state that should ordinarily be meted out to political activists. I also have happened to represent some journalists who have suffered this. In the 2021 elections, I think if Irene could recall that sad incident that happened outside, ironically, the UN Human Rights Office then, where journalists were beaten, including female journalists, a matter which eventually ended up before the High Court Civil Division. People like Shamim Nabakoza, Josephine Namakombi, beaten by the military right outside the gate of the UN Human Rights Office. I want to thank Uganda Law Society for organizing this event, because acknowledging that the media plays a key role is a statement that no one else in Uganda can make today apart from Uganda Law Society. ladies and gentlemen, join me in appreciating the Uganda Law Society for honoring this event in World Press Freedom Day. Even for all the lawyers, several court decisions have emphasized that freedom of the press and expression is a cornerstone of our democracy. I think the most recent being when the Constitutional Court was striking down the draconian Computer Misuse Amendment Act. In the lead judgment of Justice Mulia Agonja, it was broadly emphasized that without free expression, without freedom of the media, we cannot talk about democracy. So there is a direct relationship between all the other rights, especially civil and political rights, and freedom of the press and the media. We should also acknowledge that when democracy and all other civil rights are threatened, it inevitably follows that even free expression and even the free flow of information and the freedom of the media will also be threatened. It's not a coincidence, therefore, that as the political clampdown on multipartyism, on other civil liberties, on civil society, on the civic space, it inevitably follows that there will be a clampdown on the freedom of the media and freedom of expression. Because what the state doesn't want you to see is what it does in the darkness. The Daily Monitor recently wrote aptly a very good headline that democracy dies in darkness. The reason why the media finds itself as enemies, just as political enemies, is because the state doesn't want you to shine that light onto those excesses of the state. When my brother Derek was narrating the ugly incident of 2020-21 Kalangala, I vividly recall, Derek, if you do, we met at Kalangala, at Masaka Police Station on 31st December 2020. When the entire NOP campaign team had been arrested the previous day, and including journalists like Derek, like Carlton Scovia, and others. I met Derek at Masaka Police, and he had just been released, and even feared to come close to the police station, fearing that maybe he could easily be dragged back in. Everyone who has followed the NUP presidential campaigns, both in 2020 and 2025-26 recently, knows the extreme conditions under which the journalists work. And everyone knows that these journalists have faced the same brutality that the political activists have met. Journalists have been beaten, they have been tear gassed, they have been pepper sprayed, and of course, they also face the same threats, driving long distances. They inevitably suffer the consequences of the professions they have chosen. And many of these journalists don't choose. They have been assigned by their bosses, but they have suffered. We want to celebrate journalists in particular, but in a special way celebrate the female journalists. Everyone knows that female professionals, including lawyers, face other peculiar challenges apart from that their male colleagues don't face. It takes courage, it takes boldness. I see people like my sister, Swabla Omuksa, in the audience. She's always on the side of Dorothy, on top of a van, moving amidst all the terrible conditions. So we celebrate the female journalists in particular, especially those who work under extreme, strenuous conditions, covering political, what the government has termed as opponents or enemies, as seen in the lenses of the security agencies. We would like to celebrate their courage, we would like to celebrate their resilience, and we know that they are paving a direct contribution onto democracy and onto the fight for the liberties that Ugandans are yearning for, and absolutely, eventually, the rule of law. On behalf of the National Unity Platform, and of course on my personal behalf, I want to celebrate Dorothy. I want to join all the other voices that have stood and celebrate you for your courage, and of course, end that keep going. One day, we shall see the very better country that we are all yearning for, which most importantly, supports, recognizes the rule of law. that Uganda Law Society stands for. I thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for those words of wisdom and encouragement, both to the general journalists, but specifically to the female journalists. And we're very glad to announce that we have been joined by very many of them in that exemplary capacity. Thank you so much for joining us. Your words of wisdom and encouragement, and of course, the citations that you have given us are very, very alive, especially considering the last one, which was to do with the Computer Misuse Amendment Act. That, of course, I remember I had the honor to pick the judgment with you, and we had some discussions about it, and lo and behold, here we are trying to unpack the consequences, but also celebrate the ladies, especially, as we have said, who have been through thick and thin and trying as much as possible to help promote rule of law. And that's where exactly the Uganda Law Society comes in, to help have such very critical conversations to help underscore the discourse of journalism. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still moving forth, and we would like as well to add on to what the Honorable George Musisi, in representative capacity of the President of the National Unity Platform, His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi, for those words of wisdom, would like to add to that by requesting the presence and the speech or remarks from an international lawyer and government who is from the press, who is Mr. Peter Bernard, whose topic, or who is going to give us remarks in regard to press freedom in contemporary African politics, juxtaposed with the celebration of Miss Dorothy Nalumansi. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me Mr. Peter Bernard.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much. My name is Peter Bernhard. Thanks so much for the invitation from the Uganda Law Society today. Everything I have been hearing was very, I'm not an Ugandan, of course, so I'm learning a lot. I have been here 20 years ago, and when I came back, I saw a lot of big changes. Let's say the highway, digitalization of registering companies, and the biggest change was maybe personal, because nowadays people call me Muse or uncle. So I'm here now in this function to talk to you and put this commemoration in a bigger, because I cannot talk of all the incidents and all the experience you had, but I want to put it in a bigger picture. But before I'm doing this, I also want to mention that when I was young, I tried to become a journalist too. I applied in a very famous journalist school in Germany, which is a Henry Nunn school, and but I failed. So I became a lawyer. And I very much admire all the work journalists are doing. Now let me give you some small statements before I'm getting a bit in the bigger context. So I think many journalists in Africa, they do not wake up asking how to become famous. They wake up asking whether truth still matters and whether society will value those who defend it. And we must never normalize the fear under which many journalists operate. A journalist should carry a notebook, not anxiety about whether telling the truth will come at personal costs. And the real story of Doreen Nalumansi, I think, is maybe that she continued what I heard, reporting, when maybe others would have chosen the silence. And this, I think, is an empathy I saw in you, and I saw also in your husband, that journalists needs to be driven very much by this kind of empathy, and you wonder where this comes from. Is it empathy? Because you don't know all these people you're reporting. They're not your friends, they are people, human beings. But the question is now how you wake up every morning and getting this empathy to go out while you're still knowing that everything may be, you're not only reporting on elections, you're also reporting on other issues, isn't it? So this is something which I really admire, and to understand how people can wake up, go outside in the field and report on business, mixing themselves into business, which are not theirs, but reporting on it. So very much courage, very much welcomed on this. Now let me take this now in a bigger context. We have all experienced somehow what we call COVID, isn't it? COVID was a game changer. And it gave us a very, very clear example how history teaches us something important. Societies rarely lose freedom all at once. Freedom disappears quietly. First, when people become afraid to ask questions. And later, when they become afraid to speak at all. So you know, when we had COVID, I was asking a lot of questions. And I lost a lot of friends because they didn't like the questions. No? And we all knew that under COVID we had a restriction of our civic rights. So this is a quite interesting thing how it works today. And let me bring this now into an African context. Now Africa, for me, first point, Africa is entering a new information battlefield. Now what does it mean? Africa is entering a new information battlefield, meaning the contemporary geopolitical environment is shaped by disinformation campaigns, digital surveillance, i.e. generated propaganda, foreign influence operations, algorithmic manipulations, and polarized political communications. So Africa is increasingly exposed to competition between Western powers, China, Russia, Gulf states, and global tech corporations. In this context, independent journalism becomes part of a national security. It's not the other part. Journalism is not against the government, it's not against a state. It becomes a part of the national security to fend, to get the real stories, and not that a country without independent journalists becomes vulnerable to manipulation by both domestic and foreign actors. And this is something which we should not forget, because now we are living in a world, now this is YouTube, everybody can listen to YouTube and the whole world, in America, in Europe. But to make sure that your stories are still African stories, are told by Africans, and not manipulated by algorithm and fake news, this is why you need African journalists. And the same thing in Germany, in France, or whatever. Because we are all facing this kind of fake news wake, which is like a tsunami. And who is now telling the truth? So second point I want to make is press freedom is essential for African sovereignty. Many governments see critical journalism as destabilizing, but the opposite is often true. Without credible local media, citizens rely on rumors. Foreign narratives dominate. Social media influencers replace professional journalists. Trust in institutions collapse. So independent African, and I say female journalism, allows Africa to tell its own story instead of becoming the object of competing external narratives. I think, so if Africa does not control their own information space, others will control it for them. I think this is very clear for journalism. That's why independent local journalism is so important. Because you know the real stories, not us, not algorithm. And IE is definitely changing, is a game changer, another game changer. So third point, economic development depends on trustworthy information. Investors, citizens, institutions need reliable information. Where media is intimidated, corruption grows, procurement becomes opaque, public debt is hidden, business confidence declines. A free press helps create accountability, predictable governance, and better investment climate. So press freedom is not anti-development, it is a condition for sustainable development. My fourth point, journalists today face new threats beyond censorship. Traditional repression still exists. Of course, you have what we heard, arrests, intimidation, shutdowns, restrictive laws. But newer threats are equally dangerous. First, online harassment, trolling in English, deepfakes, economic capture of media houses, dependence on political financing, and surveillance technologies. So female journalists are especially targeted through gender digital violence. And this is a new threat, what we call this kind of harsh days. You know, I'm not a Facebook generation, but if somebody wants to attack, it's not about intimidating or just arresting. It can also attack and destroy reputations through a digital harassment. So these are the new threats in our new era where we all have to face, even in Europe. So my fifth point is Africa must protect journalists institutionally, not symbolically. Of course, you can advocate for stronger legal protection, digital safety training, fact-checking networks, and so on. But the strong line is journalists should not have to choose between professional integrity and personal safety. Yeah. So a journalist should feel at least somehow safe. But I don't believe this somehow in total, because even when I look to Europe, if you reveal a real case, or America, the Watergate, I mean, all these people have been putting themselves into the topic, and of course they were somehow a bit nervous and afraid, because you never know what will happen afterwards and if it becomes a scandal or not. So the truth is always dangerous to tell. So the last point, is technology companies now influence African press freedom. A major contemporary issue, global platform determines visibility, monetization, audience reach, and public discourse. African journalism is therefore dependent on algorithms designed elsewhere. This creates a new form of dependency. So today, press freedom is shaped not only by governments, but also by algorithms. My last point, and of course this has been said somehow before, it's press freedom and democracy are inseparable. I mean, when media spaces shrink, extremism spreads, public trust erodes, and elections become contested. So a society that silences journalists eventually silences citizens. So let me finish with a sentence. Africa does not need less press freedom in order to preserve stability. Africa needs stronger, more ethically, more professional, and more protected journalism to navigate the complexity of today's geopolitics. So I really wish the courage to all these journalists here in Uganda and in Africa in general, but I also wish this courage to my own fellow journalists in Europe, because the challenge is everywhere the same. We are all the same, and everybody wants to talk, and we are human beings, we all want to talk, isn't it? And if we don't talk, and if somebody silences our talk, we have an issue to interact with each other. And again, thank you so much, Dorothy, for this endeavor you are taking on. I've seen the videos. The first time in my life I've seen these videos, I have to say. And it's of course touching. But I also believe it is not always the election time. You have still now new endeavors in the coming months and years. And I think please consider what I was saying, that the threats are not only now physically also, it can also be digital. So it's all about standing up, waking up in the morning, say, I want to do a good job. And this empathy and this courage you should continue to have in this life. And I see you are very much supported by very strong men. And I would say behind every strong woman there's a strong man, but normally it says differently. Every strong man has a strong woman, but in this case, I don't know how to shape it. So thank you very much again for this invitation. I wanted to make it short and smart, and I think I just gave you some ideas about the change of journalism now in this world of algorithm and IE, and it's becoming more complex for all of us. And I really want that you Africans tell your African stories and not get influenced by our stories, our narratives. You have to protect your sovereignty and your stories in Africa. And much for this invitation. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. We have a very, very good take-up from what you just delivered to us. You have encouraged us to, as Africans, tell African stories and not be influenced by the stories that come from outside Africa. Contemporary aspect about it. We want to also appreciate the realities that you have put forth for us, especially from the days of COVID and the aspects where questions were asked but answers were very few, and your intention to have journalism but failed and instead joined the noble profession. We're not taking anything away from journalism. You guys are the heart of information. We appreciate you, but again, as well, as we are together, journalism not be separable. Just like he said, press freedom can't be separated from democracy, and trying to make it count, and as well as making the gentlemen happy while they are being celebrated, especially the couple that is before us.
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that, especially a couple before us. And imagine a journalist who is going out to the field and still has to make supper, dinner, breakfast. I don't know what happens when she's in the field and you're away, but we're believing that by the time you've come to celebrate her, there must be a secret behind that. So behind every strong woman today that we are celebrating, there is a strong man. Couple. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We are continuing to move, and Peter has been able to unpack the fact of the importance of economic development, which depends on trustworthy information. For countries to make decisions, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be information such that a person or an investor is able to make a decision to come into the country and say, initiate a manufacturing idea or invest in any way that is possible. And that goes to the heart of what journalism means. For somebody to be on YouTube and simply type, what is the state of journalism in Uganda? What is he or she going to find? Are we going to find a good story? Are we going to find Dorothy being celebrated by the state, even if she is necessarily covering political activists, as Honorable George Musisi was alluding? Is that what is going to be found on YouTube? Is it going to be the first thing? He has also, of course, as well, tackled the aspect to do with technology and being influenced by international companies. We all know Meta and all the other companies that we are aware of that have also entered the space of journalists, to the extent that sometimes we might not, in quotes, need the journalist's report if we can get it on WhatsApp or on Facebook or whatever. But the question is, who are behind that aspect of reporting? So we are going to leave that to be questioned to the panelists, which is our next session. Mr. Peter would like to thank you so much for your research. Thank you so much for standing with us and partnering with us as the Uganda Law Society. Coming to give us a speech in this regard means so much. Yes, coming to be with us means a lot, and rightly called Musei. Thank you so much, Musei. We are your children. If you're a Musei, of course, you have children, you have grandchildren, and we would like to appreciate your gesture to come and share with us. And we also want to pick from here and make journalism in Africa and in Uganda particularly better. All a task given to the journalists, but also those that support the journalists, being a fourth arm of government, which is the fourth estate, and especially because we can have such meaningful discussions and deliberations. Thank you so much. May God bless you. And as we continue to get into the next item for consideration, we'd like to recognize the presence of the council member in representation of the governing council, that is the acting secretary general, Mr. Sali Babu, who joined us in the course of the session going on. Would like to thank you for making time and welcoming you in here. And Mr. Babu, the acting secretary, on behalf of the governing council, is going to take us through a moment of reading a citation for the celebrated Mugore in the house, that is Miss Doreen, Dorothy Nalumansi, and he is also going to partake of giving her an award that has been prepared specially by the Uganda Law Society on behalf of the governing council, but also in recognition of the female journalists out there, but also generally on behalf of journalism and the members of the journalism fraternity that go out there to make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me the Acting Secretary of the Uganda Law Society Governing Council, Advocate Sally Babu.
Yes, good morning. In a special way, I wish to thank our panelists for the day, for endeavoring to come, although I'm sure the invite's on short notice, but to come and make the presentations they have ably made exhaustively. I wish to also welcome the members of the Uganda Law Society, those physically here, as well as those of the Secretariat and those who are following online. It is with great honor that I'm standing in front of you on behalf of the President of the Uganda Law Society and the Governing Council of the Radical New Bar. Freelance journalist Dorothy Nalumansi has pursued her craft under conditions marked by intimidation, arbitrary arrests, equipment seizure, censorship, or abandoned public interest reporting. Through independent, fact-based journalism, she has documented abuses of power, given voice to marginalized communities, and subjected the exercise of state authority to scrutiny at a time when such work carries grave personal risk. In doing so, Ms. Nalumansi embodies the spirit of resilience that sustains press freedom in Uganda. Courage without recklessness, independence without partisanship, and commitment to the public good despite hostile circumstances. The Uganda Law Society recognizes Ms. Nalumansi as an exemplar of professional integrity and steadfastness. Her work affirms that a free press remains indispensable to the rule of law, to constitutional governance, and to the protection of human rights. Signed by Isaac K. Semakade, Senior Counsel, the President of the Uganda Law Society, and the leader of the Radical New Bar Governing Council. Thank you. In a special way, in commemoration of the World Press Day, and also appreciating the efforts of Ms. Doreen Dorothy Nalumansi, the Radical New Bar Governing Council wishes to present a Radical New Bar attire, because with your commitment to the rule of law and fighting oppression at all levels, you are indeed a radical and you deserve this. I also wish to request one of our radical members, that is Honorable Musisi, to come and present this to a fellow radical. And I also request Mr. could come along in presentation of the same, the anchor. We also have a Radical New Bar bottle.
Okay, thank you so much. A very emotional moment for Miss Doreen, Dorothy Nalumansi in recognition of her efforts. It has been an honor to come into your life, at least for something memorable to that extent. We know it's very heartwarming, and would like to also take the opportunity to re-welcome you to accept the offer, whereas you have received it with very few remarks. A speech of acceptance would only complete the activity. If you don't mind, we'd like to request you to come forth and accept the offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I didn't expect this much today, but I would like to thank the ULS or the Radical New Bar for this opportunity, and I do accept it. I'm the new rebel. Yeah, the new rebel. Thank you so much.
The Radical New Bar is actually what we are, and we're here to break the chains and reset the way journalism is practiced by recognizing those that go out to the field and to the battlefield and to the bushes, because we are here for the purpose of rule of law. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Those that are online, still going on, thank you for joining us. We are going to leave the celebration, particularly of the female journalists at hand, and we're going to move to a panel discussion to discuss critical matters affecting the discourse of journalism in Uganda, in Africa, and across the globe. And we have been blessed with very, very trained professional journalists in the building that are going to help us unpack this discussion, and we're going to use the opportunity to, in a very special way, introduce to you our individuals that are going to be as panelists. We have one amongst all the others, Dr. George Lugarambi, who is a media scholar. Would like, yes, I think you've taken over the seat. May you clap for him as he picks himself up. Without moving any further away, we are going to retain Mr. Derek Wandera, who spoke himself here as he was showing us his gangster kind of upbringing, a veteran, and we're going to use you to help to unpack what we are going to be discussing. We shall also have the celebrated media trainer, journalist, and CEO, Afri Media Training Institute, that is Miss Irene Abalo. She's coming to be with us. And last but not least, we are having with us Mr. Alex Atuhire, who is the Finance Secretary, Uganda Editors Guild. Thank you so much for making it with us, and we are going to use this opportunity to discuss the theme of the celebration of World Press Freedom Day, but also to put it into perspective to understand the discourse of the journalism perspective in Uganda. We are going to request, do we have a microphone, kindly? Let's have the microphones over there, please. The way in which we're going to run this, I must inform you, I should have been joined by Miss Carlton. Mr. Derek had made arrangements, but for reasons beyond her control, she's not able to join us. She should have been partnering me here to take this session on, but we are going to be relentless and continue, and we shall use this opportunity to ask a few questions that the panelists are going to help to discuss these questions. And the questions are going to be generic. They're going to be tackling journalism, press freedom, and democratic press in light of the commemoration of World Press Freedom Day. If you don't mind, you're going to write the questions. We shall ask one question, and each of you will take a moment very briefly to give your views and put perspective as we celebrate the female journalists, especially Miss Dorothy, Doreen, Nalumansi, but also share your experience if possible, and then find a way to coin the answer to touch the discussion to do with rule of law. The first question that we have from the general perspective is, in your view, what is the current state of press freedom in Uganda today? It's one of the simplest questions, but very complicated because everybody has his or her own perspective. What is the current state of press freedom in Uganda today? That is supposed to lay for us a foundation. Then we shall pick on to more complex questions. If you don't mind, there's a microphone before you. We might not necessarily go by the order of how you're seated, but it would still be fair to rely on how you're seated. Doctor, if you don't mind, we would like to begin with you, please. You can just press the button before you. Is it possible?
All right. Yes. So thank you for the question.
Yeah. Could you raise the microphone a little?
Okay, a little bit. Yes. Yes. As introduced, I'm George Lugalambi, and I'm media scholar. That's what I do for a living, and also on. So asked what of media, of press freedom in Uganda. I think it's very much a mixed bag, and I think in looking at press freedom, you always I think traditionally we always tended to look at press freedom more as a relationship between the press or journalism generally and the state. But I think today we see that press freedom has to be understood more broadly in the context of the different media spaces in which journalists operate. And so, if you're looking at press freedom, we are looking at the role of the state, but also very importantly, looking inward or internally. In terms of the role of media institutions themselves, we are looking at the role that media practices themselves play in terms of shaping the environment in which journalists operate globally. Generally, I think over the last 3 years we have seen that there has been a significant decline in the freedoms, of the press to operate, and a lot of this has got to do because, has got to do with the conflicts that are taking place in the Middle East and other parts of the world. So we've seen a lot of pressures on journalists. Many more journalists have been killed, in the two major wars that are happening today in Ukraine and the Middle East than probably over an entire decade. So if you're looking at the global level, the conflict, the geopolitical pressures, today are imposing a lot of challenges for journalism. If you look locally, within Uganda, there are a lot of pressures that are coming from just the sheer, if you think about, I think if you ask most journalists, perhaps the biggest threat to their freedom, the freedom of their professional practice, is viability, sustainability of media, because you see, we are, the press is facing issues of sustainability and viability from an economic point of view a lot more severely than we have seen, in the past. And so, because you see, if you're looking at political pressures can be, predictable. But I think, the issues of sustainability, have hit the media in a way that is not really very easy to deal with. Because as we know, in the kind of media, a very highly digitalized environment, information environment that we are dealing with, media platforms have become extremely competitive, and how a media enterprise really survives, in that context, is becoming a very, very serious issue. And on a typical day, anybody running or managing, a press, operation, what you're thinking about is your capability to be able, to measure the means, the economic means, to be able to report. And media that is not viable cannot really withstand any kind of pressure, and especially political pressure. So I think for me, the biggest challenge that we really ought to be looking at are really the pressures that the media is facing today, especially from the point of view of economic sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please proceed. Mr. Alex Atwaire, thank you so much.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Alex Atwaire, and I'm the treasurer of the Uganda Editors Guild. For the context of this discussion, I like to speak like lawyers and say I will associate myself with the submission by my senior colleague, Dr. George, about the state of media freedom in the country, but first and to add that, and this discussion is really timely coming on the backdrop of the celebration of the World Press Freedom Day. And as you know, our mantra in the journalism industry and in the media sector is that journalism is not a crime. So I'll add that press freedom is a right protected by the Constitution of Uganda and also other international covenants. But as we speak here today and as we continue to celebrate the World Press Freedom Day, the media industry in Uganda continue to face historical challenges, and then, of course, there are new challenges. The historical challenges include the legal frameworks, criminalizing practice of journalism is a continuous challenge, and this is something we see with the passing of the sovereignty bill yesterday by Parliament, which has sections. We have not looked at the law that was passed in Parliament, and we shall be able to respond, which included sections, the bill included sections, especially section 10 to 13, that criminalized free space. And I think that's an attack on the platforms of freedom of expression. Then, of course, there are immediate and future challenges. Immediate challenges is the welfare of journalists, the pay for journalists, every time the discussion comes up, we come to the reality that the law in Uganda does not provide for a minimum wage. So sometimes we get held up by the fact that the law does not provide for a minimum wage. The number two is the security of those who practice journalism. And we want to thank foot soldiers like Dorothy, who continue to hold the flag high despite the challenges that foot soldiers face in the field. Then, of course, I will also accept that there are new challenges that have emerged because of the changing business model. At the end of the day, the media is a business, and the media must exist to be able to defend itself and play its role as and play its public interest role. So the changing business models have challenged those in practice to focus on how to remain viable. And I think it is a really challenge because on top of journalists having to do their work, their journalistic duty, their responsibility of acting in public interest, they also have to think about how to sustain the media businesses. So historical challenges like welfare of journalists and welfare of journalists and security of journalists, and new challenges like viability, the economic viability of media houses, are the things we have to confront to attain freedom of expression today in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer. Miss Irene, kindly shoot. A lot is expected from you, by the way.
I would like to say, as a gender trainer, sitting here alone is not fair.
Maybe for the record, there was some journalists that were welcomed also for this session, but they didn't make it, and they are female. Particularly, Miss Tuhaise Mildred should have been here with you, but she communicated otherwise. So kindly receive us with a kind heart.
It's all right. A very big hat you're making me wear. But good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Recognizing my fellow panelists here, and thank you for the question about the current state of press freedom in Uganda today. You know, the other day on 3rd May, we walked and we were commemorating the conversations that were happening during the walk and after the walk. Could tell you that, one, there's a state of fear. Fear we thought would only be during the election for journalists. Two, there is journalism education discrediting that is happening both by the state and citizens. I don't know whether that makes sense. The fact that we have so many people holding gadgets and recording something, and journalists somehow are not being taken seriously. And including the comments that are made by the people who should actually be supporting journalism. I was in a forum where there were very respected people. And instead of looking at the challenges that journalists were facing, they were blaming the journalists for the challenges they are facing. For instance, why don't you know how to do your work properly as a journalist? Why do you only write stories? You can't write day 2 stories. Now that takes you to the concerns that Dr. George Lugalambi and my colleague Alex Atwaire here raised. That whereas the revenue models are changing and journalism needs to make more money for the private media houses, the practice of journalism has not significantly had investment that should allow it grow to the level of what is expected of these journalists. I'm a media trainer. But let me tell you, when you interact and engage with these journalists, the expectations placed on them do not match the skills they're possessing at the moment. Yet if you go to the media house and say, well, we need to retool your team members. Now that budget does not exist. They'll tell you how the balance sheet is not balancing. And yet it is actually, their business is the work that the journalist brings on a table, right? But if you're not investing in it, what does it mean? One, we are exposing journalists to unethical behavior, not to say this should be an excuse that journalists do certain things unethically or unprofessionally, but I think for you to get the best out of something, you must be able to give, right? We're always given the example of a cow, that you want to milk the cow, but you've not given it the grass to feed on. that is what is happening in the journalism space right now. And that's why if you talk about issues to do with threats, they will tell you, man, I'm mentally exhausted. You're talking about press freedom, but every day I'm having to think after writing this story and it's published, who is going to care about me? The headline is good, it's on the front page and everything, but who is caring about the journalist? Their mental state, apart from the physical beating, which I hear has greatly reduced, but apart from the physical beatings being reduced, do we understand the emotional elements happening to journalists? So I would say we are sugarcoating a lot of things to do with press freedom, but also how the journalist is doing, because the balance sheet is not balancing for media owners, especially because a country where every other sector is private and run by some people, it's a cause of concern. And finally, the laws that are coming up. Again, on 3rd May, we heard that there's going to be now one law that puts together everything communication in this country. And the way that is talking about this law, you begin to question, okay, you want to bring the UCC Act, maybe the Press and Journalists Act and everything and put them into one document, but what is the spirit with which these laws are being made and brought to us? If you say there's going to be a central communications law, it feels like there's always a way some individuals are working with it feels like there's always someone trying to use the law to tighten a bit into press freedom, to tighten a bit into free expression. And every other day this happens, Ugandans are watching. People are watching. And if you ask yourself, we make contributions, we shout and say, hey, look here. You remember the famous saying of, I can't breathe? Some Ugandans are saying, look here, we will not be able to breathe when you bring these laws to our spaces. But after that, you hear that a few people sat somewhere, they disagreed a bit, and the thing passes. So whose interests are they serving? And do these interests represent the greater interests of people or the Ugandans out there? So press freedom, sir, there is fear. There's discrediting of the work that we do. There is so much focus on the private sector making money out of a cow that can hardly stand sometimes because they are mentally drained. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Irene. You've ably described what it looks like, and we want to hear from an individual who takes that coffee on Saturday at 10 a.m. if he gets a transport allowance, because the investment is minimal, as you've said, Ms. Irene, but let Mr. Derek try to give his perspective.
Thank you, moderator. This question needs every attention, I think every day, because as an active practitioner of in the media spaces, it's very imperative of us to think about the situation within which we are working. But I'm going to speak especially from the point of view of my experience, but also my passion. The question of opportunity. And I will count for you off my fingertips on the number of opportunities that journalists or media practitioners have in this country. If you're very lucky to enter into, say, communications, you'll be lucky. But then you look at the number of opportunities you have: New Vision, you have Next Media, you have Nation Media, and then some other platforms, UBC, and whatever. Universities are producing to a maximum of about 1,500 learners every other year that come into circulation. Do they have the opportunity to practice? Do they have places where they can call, a place where they can work? After counting those four, I can tell you without a scintilla doubt that the remaining media houses that are based on either religion or very individualistic will have journalists going 5-7 months without pay. You, on top of having to be paid as little as, by the way, there are radio stations that pay 4,000 shillings for a story. And then even the 4,000 will come after 7 months. And that's the situation within which we operate. Few opportunities, few are willing to even like enter into contract with journalists. So you are taking students, you're paying as a parent, you're paying as much money as possible on all these universities around. But even when you have invested in your child, she or he comes out and they don't have anything to do. If they get an opportunity to practice, they are not given contracts. No contracts. They are not paid as they should. And how does this come about? I probably will cement it on the government policy. For any starting media house like I run, one of the few things you have to do and grapple with are high taxes. High taxes for operation. You have to pay the operating license, you have to pay the trading license, you have to pay PPDA. If you are to get any deal, you have to file tax returns, pay as you earn, you have to pay VAT, you have to pay withholding tax. You have, at the end of the day, as a media investor or a person who is investing into the media, you're going to find it very difficult to even sustain 10 journalists. And all this is coming from the government policy. Yesterday, just maybe last week, very many taxes were passed. And are these affecting those that are passing the taxes? No, they're affecting the people who are the final consumers. So the state within the media is, I would describe it as one that is on the sick bed, probably even on oxygen, because very few opportunities. But even when those opportunities show up, you are not very sure whether you're going to gain from those opportunities. Away from the fact that we are still grappling with violations against us, I would maybe cite a report of the Human Rights Network for Journalists of 2020-2024. 110 incidents of violations against us in terms of being beaten, being arrested, and stuff like that. It had come down from undocumented. And that's the kind of state that we are working with in. And then you ask the government whether they have any kind of commitment to having a free press, which free press is a cornerstone to every democracy. As we continue to sing the song of democracy in our country, we see the shrinking space of our freedom of press, and this is something that needs further attention, and we should be able to speak about it every day and ask the question of which kind of state we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the panel answers that we got. We are clearly seeing a trajectory that is in a sorry state. I'm hearing descriptions of sick bay, oxygen, state of fear. Irene alluded to a state of fear even after the elections, and yet we have 5 years after the elections within which to still operate and ensure access to justice and press freedom. We're hearing like having to face historical challenges from Mr. Alex Otire, and clearly there is a lot that needs to be done. And Doctor, you were not very kind, already decrying. So we want to juxtapose those answers to all of you again, and Mzee Peter, who of course now is going to be looking at it from the perspective of the law, because now we want to ask you the questions the question as to what reforms you propose to strengthen press freedom and responsible journalism in Uganda. It, of course, is a hardly a lost question, but let's look for the answers in what reforms, even after you've decried and given your perspective, what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you for giving the floor. Let me just please add something. When we talk about freedom of press, we still think about the print medias, isn't it? Well, you just mentioned some of them, you know? In a country where I'm asking myself, who are your clients? Who are your customers at the end for your press information? Is the print medias looking to the price not an elite modem to get informations? I mean, I found out if I want to know something in Uganda, I buy me 2 newspapers. One, somebody told me is more the government, the other is more private, and then they told me you have all the information what's going on in Uganda. As I'm not on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. So when in a country where 50% of your population, please correct me if I'm wrong, is under 15. More than that. 75. So then, I'm asking my question, who are the newspapers? We have newspapers thin, thick like this. In 10 years now it's going to there, like this, thin like this. The journalist situation is changing. And where are people getting, even me, where I'm getting my information? I'm going online. So of course this is now a credibility issue. Is information I'm getting online, is this from journalists who are, so it's a change. And in Uganda especially, if you say it's more than 50, these are people who may definitely not afford, most of them, the young people, not afford the print media. So where are they getting the information from, and who is interested at the other end on your information? Who is not, as we say in Germany, somebody said, a politician said, what I'm interested in the newspaper from yesterday, you know? So I'm also understanding a bit better what we talk about press freedom, who are the customers of this press freedom. Sorry to take a bit of role of...
It's well. I'm imagining we're all on the same page. Please proceed.
Oh, so do I tackle the question you asked, the policies, suggesting policies?
Yes, yes, please.
So I've been on different fora discussing first the Press Freedom Act. I mean the Press Act, you know, which has a lot of, you people call lacunas. You look at the history behind the enactment of the Press Act. I think it's called the Uganda Press Act. You look at the history, and it is something coming from an angered president. So let me give some history to this. So I think in 1996, and George might be familiar with this story. I think the president of Kenya came to Uganda to visit Museveni, and one of the journalists in Uganda asked a horrible question about the son of the president, the visiting president, having committed some crime in the country, in his country, and this question angered Museveni very much. And then he came up, the Zambian president, yes, the Zambian president, and that's when he woke up and he forced through the enactment of the Press Act. And now we are reviewing the Press Act, and we are saying if it wasn't for this situation, and probably there was a think tank that took time to think about this law before its enactment, would we be having these lacunas that are there? Or would we be having a very flat law that is actually pro-people? Many a time we are seeing that Ugandans and the people who are based on sentiments, and it's a problem that we are suffering from. So my view is, as a country, we need to sober down. We need to get people that can see it at what we would call the central nervous system of our policies and take time to discuss many of these laws to make sure that laws are not passed just for sentimental feelings, but they are passed for the purpose that they are made for, which is rule of law. When we don't have the rule of law in the country, and we're passing laws like the Computer Misuse Act, which is struck down a few months later, just because one person was annoyed because they hold a big office, they say, let's go for this law. And it's all sentimental. Before we know, it's not viable. It's affecting everyone in the community. And we can mention many of these laws, the POMA, you know, this one, even the Political Party and Organizations Act that was just amended recently. You're hearing, of course, their suggestions, of course, to review even you know. So I feel, as a country, we need to get sober brains. We need to get people who can sit and discuss the central nervous system of our policies. And the law about press freedom should be one of those that we should start with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Miss Irene, please proceed.
Allow me respond to Paul as well as I answer this question.
Please feel free.
All right.
Thank you.
So I happened to do my MA in digital journalism from the Aga Khan University. And those were some of the questions we were fronted with as a class. And we kept answering and trying to listen to not just the journalists in the newsroom, but also there were audience researches that were done and all that. But also later when I came and I was at the desk for 2 years editing online to a specific daily monitor. We were the people at the back. You realize that it's not so much about us not knowing the audience. It is so much about the people in management and leadership and making the decisions that should create the shift and change in how we reach our audiences, where they consume content from, who is making the decisions on what tools we need as editors, for instance. I was an editor, and Derek, I will tell you, some days were so frustrating. You enter a meeting and you're trying to just show and let them know that, you know, we've been doing it like this. It is not working because you need to navigate this and now come here. Because we've shifted from here, now we are here. But someone is really not just getting it. It can be frustrating when the leadership is not shifting together with the change that is happening. And of course, being big and the legacy and everything, it takes them a bit of time to shift and change and go to where the audience is. I'm telling you, up to now, we're still sharing links. You share the link and expect people to click the link and go to the website, instead of repurposing the content on the website and giving it to the audience where they are. People are not interested in your links anymore. People are interested in you giving them the content as it is, where they are. They don't want to go to your website. I don't know how many of you still search websites and say www.dailymonitor.com. So I think the problem mainly is in decision making at leadership level, but two, how easily, I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah. How easily our leaders are being also retooled to adapt. We have people who have been in the newsroom for 20 plus years, and they're so used to how they do things, such that if you make suggestions, they'll first look at the budget and say, we don't have a budget for this one. But what you're actually investing in and putting so much energy in is not giving you the returns. So if the return on investment then was because the newspaper was this thick, and now you're having it like this, and you don't see the return on investment, how about you just ask yourself, why am I not seeing the return here? And then you can tweak. And with most of the tools that are coming that should assist journalism, they are paid for. They are paid for. And most of the platforms, remember when you were using Comedia to edit content for the Monitor website, Comedia is a paid for platform. Now, after investing on one tool,
Media. Now you say, you see, we need this one to now support this one. They'll be like, but we just gave you this one. I'm just giving an example to tell you how difficult it is for people who know what can drive the change and help us reach the audience, but you can't drive it because it's not your company. You know, the CEO, it has to still go through the bureaucracies. It can be frustrating sometimes. So enough research has been done and more can still be done in terms of research. Dr. Georgia will tell you that the researchers are somewhere packed usually, and when you try to share with these bosses and say, this is the direction we're taking and these are the recommendations, how about you just experiment? It is costly to experiment, and some of them are afraid to go the experiment way. But how about we encourage that? Let me now get to your question on the reforms.
Yes.
One, I will continue. Oh, by the way, some of these are triggers to some of us. I grew up in a war area, so these are some sort of like triggers.
Very sorry about that.
To summarize on some of the reforms, if journalism and press freedom are to thrive, and government stops accusing journalists of being unprofessional or closing certain media houses at certain points, there has to be platforms for dialogue and meaningful conversations on how this profession should survive and move forward. We do not want people who go on the negotiating table and all they do is take the cup of tea or coffee provided and they don't meaningfully contribute to conversations in those rooms. Meaningful conversations with stakeholders and the political will to allow the press to operate. I mean, why would a company, for instance, a media company, not be allowed to cover a head of state? It is of public interest that we know what the head of state is doing. Who is having conversations that enable freedom to thrive in a situation where, one, there's discrediting of journalism, two, there is sort of like a silent press, like a silent squeeze on journalism that is not formal. You know how they kept saying that, we did not stop them. They can come and cover. But you know you can't cover. You go there and they'll tell you, you're from here, go away.
Yeah.
So if in the next election we witness this again, how are we going to get out information to our audiences, the right information that they need? Remember how in Kawempe people started sending messages to journalists? Because journalists were withdrawn from the field, the public took it in their hands to now capture and send it to the editors.
Yeah.
But remember, even when the public were sending information to the editors, we had a new challenge as editors in the newsroom. Now you don't know which information to trust because they've also infiltrated with their fake news.
Yeah.
They want you to publish a fake news, then they capture you and say, aha, you see this is fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it becomes tricky when you're operating in a territory that is having so many interests and you're constantly having to update your skills.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that is what I can say. Let us retool, let us engage meaningfully, and let us also be intentional about how we want the profession to survive or thrive without so much discrediting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Alex?
Thank you. Very quickly, Peter poses very important questions.
Yes.
Who are your clients? Who are the clients of these media platforms or these media products? It is true that the business model has changed, and it has changed. The changes have come so fast that it has been difficult for people in what I call, by the way, I train, I teach in the university now, so I'm training the next generation of journalists. There's one who walked in the room, Isano, has been with me in the university, and I like to see the work that they are doing. So the changes have come so fast that people who have been in what you call, by the way, I come from legacy media. I used to be the editor of the Monitor. So people have been what I call now, in my theory, as professional media platforms. They have been adapting at a slow pace. Because the business of the media is content. Content creation is the business of the media. So the media business model changes, so is the content creation model. There are guys creating all kinds of content and making money, and they are not in the professional media spaces. They are not in the professional media spaces. So we need to work together with the people in the professional media spaces, the legacy media spaces, to adapt to the changes, and adapt very fast. What do we do? There is a theory of the three-box solution. Theory of the three-box solution. One is that you need to forget the past. I think that's what Irene has been talking about. Every time you ask somebody to forget how they were doing things 10 years ago, Alex will say, for us, we used to write a headline like this, but we need to write it in a way that responds to the 75% of the consumer who is below 35. Actually, 70% of Ugandans are below 35. Number two is to manage the present as we create the future. The future of the media is in these young audiences. They will come with they are already coming with the different characteristics. So we need to focus on that. Adapt, innovate, and focus on these ones. Now, you ask a question about what reforms do we need. For the record, we in the media practice are not against regulation. We are not against regulation. Regulation is actually a good thing for the media, but the spirit behind some of the initiatives of the legislation is what causes problems. For example, why do you come up with laws that criminalize journalism practice? So how can we work together in the industry? And I am happy that Uganda Law Society is able to put together a discussion like this, and we thank Uganda Law Society for always defending media rights. How can we work together, be proactive? I think historically the media has accepted what comes from the people who make these laws. How can we be proactive in participating in the processes that bring these laws and before they are passed, such that we eliminate that spirit that brings laws that are out like to curtail media rights. So I think we need to work together and understand that a very professional media is a win for everybody. It is a win, of course it acts in public interest, so it's a win for the public, so the public needs to come out and defend media rights. It is a win for the people who are in public offices. But as you have seen, the digitalization has come with very many opportunities and many challenges. One of the challenges is the information disorder, the practice of misinformation and kind of situation. So we need to work together, the public, people in public offices, and also people in practice. We need to work together and be proactive in making sure that we participate in the processes that enact these laws, so that we do laws that do not curtail media rights but enable practice of media.
Thank you so much. Yes, Doctor?
Yes, so I like the idea of centering the audience, in the discussion about press freedom, talking about what Peter says about who are the clients, and I think that we've tended to look at the question of press freedom in terms of what the law owes the media, what the public owes the press, yes, what the law of the press. Yet we also know that there is a very serious deficit of trust in the news and in the media generally. And that's why audiences have become basically their own gatekeepers. On any typical day, on any typical story, even where you have the objective facts, you know, the interpretation of those facts is so variable that sometimes you wonder, how is it possible that the same set of facts are being interpreted, you know, differently? So I think that winning audience trust is the single biggest challenge and obligation for journalism and for journalists. Because we also know that this erosion of trust has also really spread to public institutions. There is a very, very serious, you know, lack of confidence, you know, in most public institutions. And this is not just restricted to Uganda, but we've also seen it, you know, globally. Public institutions, you know, the judiciary, you know, security agencies, you know, legislatures, you know, they are all suffering, you know, serious deficits of public trust. And I think the media has sort of contributed, you know, partly to that lack of trust in this institution. And I think to the extent that public institutions are not being trusted, that is also one of the reasons why news and the media generally are also really suffering from this deficit of public trust. And so to go back to the fundamental question of what the state of press freedom, you know, really in Uganda is, I think journalists and the media need to go the extra mile to win the trust of the public, so that what they report, what they cover, you know, really has got, you know, the credibility. And I think, again, as Irene said, this has now also translated into questions around, you know, the relevance of, you know, journalism as a profession at all, the relevance of the training, the relevance of professionalism generally, because I think today we are seeing a lot of, you know, the whole idea of professionalism, I think, is suffering. And probably this is not even just in media alone or journalism, but I think other professions are suffering from this as well. So for me, I think a very important dimension we really have to bring to the center is to win the trust of the audience, because if you win the trust of the audience, then you're going to have, you know, citizens fighting for media rights. But I think as we speak today, the typical citizen, I think, it's very, very difficult to convince the typical citizen that media rights are actually citizen rights. And I think that is really the most critical message we should be putting out there, because at the end of the day, journalism or, you know, the press is not reporting public issues for themselves. You know, public accountability really is about media being there as the eye and the voice, you know, of the citizens. So I think we need to be looking at what does the media need to do to win back the trust of audiences.
Thank you so much. Very, very thought-provoking answers from the panelists. We want to thank you for opening our minds, especially because you're speaking to, as you said, 70% of the population being under the age of 35, which of course means there's a lot for them to take in, consume, understand, and make sense of. And that also brings us to the next phrase of the next question, because now the journalists are meant to bring information out to us as the public. We are the public, and we are also seeing that there's a lot of misinformation, propaganda. Miss Irene alluded to the same, and public trust, as has been said, which of course is now affecting the credibility of journalism in the country or across the globe. And yet we are asking ourselves, you earlier on said, all of you alluded, at least three of you alluded to the welfare, the safety of journalism, because they are in a state of fear, especially the young ones. Let's leave the older ones. Okay, the doctor is probably seated somewhere in a public institution or wherever he's seated. He might not be going out to the field, and he's relying on certain other younger journalists. So there's an environment that is fierce and tense, and we're asking ourselves, in this age of misinformation and propaganda, how can credible journalism survive and remain trusted, especially as we are also now realizing, recently there was a matter that we had in the courts of law at Buganda Chief Magistrate's Court, in which one of the individuals of the society, that is Mr. Malay Mabirizi, was his charge was changed from what the Computer Misuse Amendment Act was said to have been offended. And after after, by the grace of God, some of us were there, after the charges were dropped because the act was declared null and void, there was a switch in the charge to make it attached to the one of the regulations of the Uganda Communications Act. Okay, the question that we are saying, because now Mr. Malay Mabirizi, from what we know, uses his phone to communicate to the public. That is another form of journalism. You will tell us as the experts in the contemporary world. And we're asking ourselves, how, in this age of misinformation and propaganda, how can credible journalism survive, remain trusted, and how has social media changed journalism in that perspective of the way you said it at some time after the journalists were kept away from covering the election, they began to rely on maybe friends or whatever you call it. The question that you asked, was it trusted? Which one should I share? Is it the one from Derek or from Robert? And where are each of these people? So how can you look for an answer to, as you want to put it again against public trust? Because now we are relying on you, and yet we're not sure whether you've given us the right information. So in light of the misinformation and propaganda and social media, how can credible journalism survive and remain trusted? I hope the question has come out for which you can give us answers. Thank you. Doctor?
So I think it's again, just to build on the point I think I was making, earlier. So one of the things, of course, we need to appreciate is that not everything that happens on media platforms is journalism, because I think journalism is a very specific kind of content. Journalism is very much about, as a journalist, you're committed to facts, and verification is the most important skill, and tool, for journalism, okay? And we also, and of course, journalism is not really just, because when we talk about facts, facts have to be analyzed, facts have to be interpreted. And, and when you do analysis, when you do interpretation, perspective is very important. Context is very important. And so a journalist who is committed to the professional practice of journalism, using the media platform that we have today, the digital tools, that we have today, the core of what they are doing is to gather those facts and verify those facts. So that when they present those facts, or when they present the information that they have gathered, they are presenting that information, in the proper perspective, in the proper context. So even when they do analysis or interpretation, even when they express, an opinion, it is an opinion that is evidence-based. It's an opinion that is backed, by facts. And so for journalists, a journalist understands that once the images are consequential, and so they have to be used in a very, very thoughtful manner. A journalist has to pay attention to context, because you have to ensure that perspectives are not distorted. So, and of course we know that the digital tools that are available have pretty much democratized access to information. They have democratized access to media platforms. And so you have people there who are expressing an opinion. But I think the problem that we have is not even the technology, is not the fact that, information is widely, people have access to information because of the tools that are available. But I think the information, the issue is more about our political culture, the culture that basically criminalizes, differences in opinion. I think it boils down simply to that. And I think we have to graduate from that kind of mentality that, that dissent and having a critical opinion. Because I think at the end of the day, responsible public discourse can contribute, and actually does contribute, to improving policy. Yes. And I think we have, and I think our laws and our constitution, have provisions that actually defend and protect, the expression of opinion, even those opinions that people in power may disagree with. Because at the end of the day, diversity in opinion strengthens our democracy, strengthens public discourse. There's so many things, perspectives that come into the public domain that would improve a policy, would improve a law. But I think to the extent that we criminalize, or to the extent that we make, dissent and contrary opinions objectionable, then we lose as a country. Yeah. Public, policy making loses, to the extent that we make it really, really difficult for contrary opinions, to come to the fore in our public discourse.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there is a lot of chaos in the journalism marketplace because there are so many people doing either journalism or doing things similar to journalism. They are not trained, but they have the tools. For me, I see this as an opportunity for journalism to stand out. Some people say that because now everything is open, some of our friends, I don't want to say their names, are making a lot of money from these platforms, from the partner platforms. So journalism is no longer important. But I see this as an opportunity for journalists to stand out. Because at the end of the day, people are looking for credible information. When you go to any of these platforms at a personal level, you want to go to a platform that is going to give you credible information about whatever subject you are, be it business, be it be political, be it be social issues, like health. I see a lot of content being created on TikTok about health, about this. But I tell you, last week, I read a contribution from Dr. Orem, the head of the Cancer Institute, about sugar, because people were telling me that now your insulin your body is resisting insulin. Then I got that opinion, it was in the Monitor, and showed it to these people who have been get all this kind of thing on TikTok. I said, for me, this is what I believe in, because I know Dr. Rem, so it is an opportunity for journalism to stand out. So journalism is not going to die. Journalism needs to be resilient. We need to adapt to new way of creating content and distributing it in a way that reaches the audience, and then journalism will survive. Journalism will credible information, because journalism is cornerstone of credible sourcing, credible information. So it's an opportunity for journalism to stand out. This chaos is an opportunity for journalism to stand out.
Thank you so much. Yes, Miss Irene.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I listened to the two gentlemen speak, and in my head I was thinking, there are people who are leveraging creative ways to work with the people who have access to information where they are, and they give it to us, and we pick it, we verify it, and run with it. Isn't that what journalists are doing these days?
Yes.
Someone gives you information, because, it's less costly for you to go start the groundwork, preliminary works. The preliminaries have been given to you, just that it is not enough.
Yes.
So how do you use what is before you, given to you by the citizen journalists, by the citizens, and then use it to your advantage? Because now for you as a professional journalist, you have the skills to go deeper and analyze what Dr. George was saying. Go deeper and analyze, but also very much aware at the back of your mind that there are deep fakes. So now it is not optional for editors, for instance, not to know fact-checking. Isano here will tell you how real AI images are these days. I just have to tell it to create a caricature of Irene Abaloto, and it will bubble down all the facts about Irene Abaloto. And if you don't know Irene Abaloto, you will go with those. But some of the things there are just because of the large language model things that we're dealing with. They're not true about Irene Oto. I even have journalists who have written wrong things about me after my incident at Kololo there. And I kept actually correcting that I was not given a lot of money that you people thought or keep saying I was given after being beaten. Who wants to be paid after being beaten anyway? I would rather not be beaten. So it's, yeah, don't pay me to beat me. Just don't beat me.
Surely.
I will work and get the money.
Surely,
honestly.
surely.
Yeah. So because we are documenting as journalists, we are still stuck in the era of we document the first draft of history. But let me tell you, documenting the first draft of history has been taken away from us because everybody else can somehow now figure out how to document this history.
Yes.
So that then begs this question. How many of us have watched a beautiful and wonderfully done investigative piece in the last 1 year, done by a Ugandan journalist and done very well without propaganda and all the other biases behind it and interests? How many have watched? Just from the audience, let me get this feedback. When was the last time you watched a good investigative piece from a journalist in Uganda and published in a Ugandan media house? Anyone?
Not me.
Perhaps not. So that tells you, whereas the public hunger for such in-depth content, for such things that would go beyond the ordinary of someone who holds a phone and can act like they are doing the professional journalism, that I think speaks for itself, that the profession is relevant, but we're just not doing it to the level that we should. And let me tell you, the BBC Africa Eye has done stories about Uganda and it gets the most attention, including the recent one about dogs in Uganda. Who watched that one? I watched it.
I watched it too.
You watched it?
Yes, please.
Now imagine how many people are consuming content done by the BBC.
Yeah.
And us here in Uganda, it's in our backyard, like right there.
Yeah.
But we've not been able to do it.
Yeah.
So that tells you, one, we also don't have as many investigative journalists out there to do this work, but it takes not just a thick skin, but a daring to literally just say, if I die, I die, for you to be able to do that journalism. But how many of us are willing to, you're willing to leave your children behind and just go and die because, so yeah, there's a lot at stake as we do this work. And finally, I think even as we talk about how we want to engage with the public and content and everything, how to handle deepfakes and all that, who are the people training the journalists? And how are they training them? How updated are they with what they should be passing on to them? We can't always be assuming that there's someone always competent enough to do the work, and that's what I got when I was at the editing desk. We always assumed that the journalists knew what they were doing. Until at some point, I got myself into a point where I was doing both mentorship and training and editing. And then I jumped out and said, let me concentrate on the two, training and mentorship. So who are the people training the journalists? Who are the people speaking to the people who employ the journalists to understand the realities on the ground? Then that way, we will be able to sort of like support journalism to thrive better. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In journalism class, there is a component that's called citizen journalists. those people that you were asking how we call them, those that send us information and know where we pick from there, those are called citizen journalists.
Okay.
In journalism, those people are very central, and they are a very big pillar in journalism.
Yes.
Because you cannot be everywhere all the time.
No.
Now, citizen journalists play a huge role of tipping. Now, the information they throw onto social media and stuff like that, I can never use that as a story. That's a tip.
Oh.
And the role of the journalist is to pick that information, sieve it, verify it, source it, and edit it before you give it to the public. And that's the flow of journalism. Now, we do not have very many citizen journalists right now. We have many media practitioners. Media practitioners are people who have platforms, who use media platforms to do their work. Are they journalists? No. Because journalism, for you to attain that title, you have to go to school.
Sure.
And if you have not gone to school, you're not a journalist. You are a media practitioner. Are they important in our society? Yes, they are.
Yes.
They are, depending on what kind of information they are sharing.
Yes.
Does this kill journalism? Not at all. In my view, they are just reshaping journalism. For what you would call legacy media or mainstream media, if you are thriving on breaking stories, you are dead and gone. Why? Because the media practitioners are doing that. They are playing the role of breaking the story every other day.
Yes.
Because they are very near to where this information is happening, they will be able to pull out their phones and put it there and break that story.
Yes.
If you as a legacy media or mainstream media have the chance to break that story, well and good, but that shouldn't be your bread of the day. Where do we go from here as media practitioners, as journalists? Now, our role has been changed. That for us now we have the chance of doing what we call day two. That someone has broken a story and said Besigye has been arrested. And all they are going to show us is the picture of Besigye being arrested and being taken to nowhere. They will not even know where he has been taken.
Yes.
And probably they will not even have the chance of asking why has he been arrested. Now, journalism gives us that mantra that then I'm going to ask the question of why, where, and the authorities will give me that information because it's to the public, it's for the public good, it's a public good.
Yes.
Why, where, and then contextualize that information and then share it. Now this brings in the pivotal question of Peter. Who is your audience?
Yes.
And where do you find your audience? Unfortunately or fortunately, the people who are consuming the breaking news are very many. They are much, much more than the people who consume this information that is sieved, that is very well articulated, that has context and background and history. And it comes as a double-edged sword to our community.
Yes.
That then misinformation, disinformation, malinformation is all going to be all over. We have a purpose as journalists to make sure that even with all this chaos that's happening, we remain with a cordial role of shaping the narrative, of shaping the discourse, of shaping the debate and perception. And that brings me to where does the journalism stand in our era? Journalism stands in a place where we must retool the work that Irene is doing, because there's a very serious shift in the way people are consuming news. I don't think the way Peter used to consume news when he was 17 is the same way he consumes news now.
No.
You know? And so, as journalists, we must evolve with the evolving times. If we do not evolve, then times are going to overtake us, and the media practitioners are going to overtake us. We have to, first of all, know where do we find our audience? Who is having them? Are they on TikTok? Are they on X? Are they on YouTube? Or they are still reading newspapers? And we must take information there. But as we take that information, we retain the badge of a journalist that we are going to verify, we're going to be fair, we're going to be balanced, we're going to be authentic and truth. For as long as we do that, we are going to retain our badge as journalists. And trust you me, there are so many people who call me and ask me, we have seen this and this happening. I have read it on someone's social media page. Is it true? Because they trust me, right?
Yes.
There are so many people who, before they believe anything, they will go and read the Daily Monitor newspaper website. What is Daily Monitor saying? And it's the truth. It's a fact. So how do we change that? We should not fall prey. We have to retool, we have to update ourselves, and we have to innovate and invent new things as journalism. And that's how the profession will move forward.
Thank you so much. Yes, Peter?
Yes. I just want to add something small. You know, it's very easy to understand Bayern Munich has lost yesterday. Quick, direct, clear, and validated by a lot of other medias, isn't it? That's a very clear information. But who wants to understand that the influence of Chinese ITC infrastructure in Uganda? And that's I'm coming back to what you said. I mean, there's really a hunger. People want to get these background stories. People want to understand what's happening in the country. It's a human being interaction game, isn't it? Who is power? Who is the power shifting? Where is the power? Who is influencing? What's happening with the relationship with China, West European Union, and so on? So I was lastly reading a very good report from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Association, which is a political association here in Uganda, about China's impact on Uganda. I mean, this was a study, too long to read, but still, these are the kind of information people want to know. People want to understand why this guy is important, what is her influence on this, because they want to position themselves in between this power play also. So this is where your task, I think, is very important. And of course, we are living in a time where the American president is just, sending out messages every day, a new one. And I was thinking one day, should I follow this? Should I get in this stress of following always this new, energizing, coming from? And at the end I said, okay, let's wait, hold on. And you are right. In my past time, there was a left-wing newspaper, right-wing newspaper. I was Spiegel, and others. I was reading all of them in the weekend, and I got a good picture. Today, it's much more complicated. And what my strategy is, I'm trying to. That's why journalism. I'm trying to validate. I'm trying to validate information through other sources. And I'm using artificial intelligence just to find out if this could be, is this probably something, So credibility, what Alex was saying, is it's the most important thing. If you're not credible, people don't trust you. And that's what Dr. George was saying. Trust is so important, isn't it? Now, again, my big question is, again, from this very simple, quick, absorbable information like, say, Bayern Munich has lost. How do you attract the consumers and do into a more to explain more complex, because the world is getting more and more complex. So who wants to listen to these background stories? I think there are a lot of people. I would love it to see more Ugandan background stories, but on the other hand, let's see, this is your Ugandan audience. You have to feel it. No? Are they ready to read this, or they're just on this TikTok, quick, exciting issues? So this is a big change of journalism, you know. Who wants to read, even it's necessary, to get his background stories? Because for us, it's important, as if you want to invest in a country, you have to understand. Look, when I'm going to Kenya, I was always amazed, and I'm 20 years I'm following Kenya, when you read the newspapers in Kenya, they are so outspoken. The editorials are just amazing, and you can just take it, copy and paste as a government. You know, you can take it as a blueprint for your politics. They're very much open. And I wondered, wow, what a power these Kenyan journalists have in Kenya to speak out everything they analyzed, you know, and not being afraid at all. If it's taken on board from the Kenyan government, it's another thing, but it's in the newspaper, you get a blueprint. Wow. And I think also this could be an idea for journalism to survive in Uganda, making a kind of prospective blueprint. I mean, we all know Vision 2040, we know all the ATM, the tenfold. I mean, this is the government strategy where I'm here now to support, because I want to link Ugandan business to Europe. But this is also something, how this is really, I mean, this I would follow up in practical cases, you know, and to explain people how this presidential initiative can be translated into concrete measures. And this is interesting, because it's not against the government, it's with the government, because the vision, I think it's very much fine to bring Uganda in a middle income, advanced. Yeah. Okay, so I think journalism, beside the breaking stories, you know, Bayern Munich has lost, you absorb it, finished. But on the other hand, I want to know why they have been losing. And this is where you come in. I don't know as an audience. But you should explain me what was the wrong strategy, blah, 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 and what's the consequence now. So this is the kind of where journalism can take up a lot of things, and yeah. So I'm very much thankful, and I think we all agree, we're all on the same page somehow, credibility, different business model, and so on. And what Irene was saying also, that yeah, your management must also adapt to the new situation. Because again, this number of 75% under 35, this is a unique challenge, it's a unique chance. In Germany, it would be 20%. So, meaning we are not reproducing ourselves, okay? So this is a very specific Ugandan context where you are in now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very critical questions, and of course the answers are broad, I can see. They are not necessarily limited to the question being asked, but of course it's also good because this is the opportunity we have for you to speak your heart and give us a general perspective of what is happening. And we, of course, cannot run away from the fact that there's a general, like we said, as we can collect, the outlying points in practice of journalism for us out here, listening to the experts, doesn't look very nice. It leaves so much to be desired. And we are asking a question of, let us go politics, because we really cannot separate ourselves from journalism and politics. And we want to ask a question of how to draw the line between national security and media freedom in light of the most recent polarized environment in regard to the politics of the country. And of course, given the most recent activities that happened, the general elections, and those prior, there were some by-elections in between in Kawempe, and the nominations, and we saw that there was still infights within parties. It didn't have to come from the opposition, and yet the journalists are not supposed to be looked out when there is something that is happening of that nature. So how can we draw the line between national security and media freedom, and how can journalists try to circumvent that kind of paralysis that is apparent in the country, please? The questions. This is the second last question. We shall have one more question before we can wind. So if you could kindly run through these last questions within maybe 2 minutes, if it's possible, please.
It's a big conundrum that we face as journalists in such times. You've quoted by-elections like the one of Kawempe.
Yes.
Maybe the previous election that had happened in 2021, and in
Yes.
2026 also it happened. I happen to have been part of all these elections, in the middle of them, reporting and covering and on the field.
Yes.
And it's huge for us to know where to draw the line between being journalists, but also understanding that the security also doing their work. Like we saw that video, I remember my wife was explaining to that officer, I'm doing my work as a journalist, you should do your work as an officer. And that's probably where we always lose the line. It's always very blurred that in one way or the other, one of us actually oversteps that line because it's blurred. But there's also state orchestrated violence against journalists and targeted incidents of journalists being in such places.
Yes.
In Kawempe, for instance, we had witnessed before that security would come and confront the voters or supporters or politicians, and in the melee we get affected, and the police would get away with a statement of saying you're collateral damage. In Kawempe, however, it was journalists, where you find a journalist, beat him. If you're not wearing any paraphernalia that identifies you as a journalist, you're going to be safe. In fact, what saved us most in Kawempe were the supporters, the politicians, that you get into the crowd of politicians and you're safe. If you ever identified yourself as a journalist, that's where you would get beaten. And for us, that through that broke the banks of logic. That now the people who are supposed to be putting out information are the ones being targeted. Then that means that there is something bigger that they're trying to hide, right? It was opposed to the other one where they used to tell us that we are collateral damage, and probably we also got to understand or even accept. However, conversations have kept happening. Conversations and initiatives have been happening between the guild, the Editors Guild, the Uganda Association of Broadcasters, all different manner of departments within journalism have been engaging the security, but also the government at large. Has it changed? Nothing. Sometimes you want to say that probably they are understanding and probably something will change. Before you finish the statement that they have changed, now before you even finish the word change, you see journalists being clobbered. You see my brother Isano being clobbered, and he was one of the very big victims of Kawempe.
Yeah.
And he was bedridden. I remember going to visit him in hospital, and he would hardly talk,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of conundrum we are in.
Yes.
There is no political will from the security, from the government in itself, from the politicians themselves, in making sure that journalists can stick to their job as they also do theirs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Derek. We must acknowledge that whereas others do the talking, others have already wounds that may not easily heal, but rather become triggers every time they have to do journalism. And so when you talk politics, we've had colleagues in the newsroom who say, I don't want to cover politics. But then you ask them, so what is it that you're going to cover now that does not have politics in it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so you want to cover health, there's a lot of politics in health.
Exactly, yeah.
You want to cover even the business, there's a lot of politics, because the people who are giving directives on who should be chased from the streets or not are politicians.
Yeah.
So the understanding of what politics is and how it contributes to all the other sectors of either the economy or our social lives should be across to all journalists. And I remember we had training sessions on public accountability and transparency. And every time we talked about the budgeting cycle, I mean, journalists didn't want that thing. Dr. George Lugalambi, I don't know how we're going to interest people in this. And I'm like, look here, it's just your brain telling you this thing is difficult. How about you just try? Just try and see what is in this thing. Because whether you want it or not, as a journalist, you're going to write and try and be as diverse as possible with voices of people. You say, I'm going to talk to the community, but at the end of it all, the other politician is still going to lie to you that this road is going to be worked on, and it is not in the budget, and he doesn't have the money and capacity to even work on the road. I remember in Lira, they actually told one politician to stop because they realized that every time the elections are nearing, what they would do is go and try to patch up roads a bit and start saying, you see, I worked on this road, if it were not for me. So they stopped them and said, no politician works on a road because it's not your mandate. Now, how can journalists empower citizens through their reporting for the public to hold these politicians accountable and say, this is not your mandate. Please stick to your mandate.
Yes.
It's not your mandate to come to every funeral we invite you to and that you must speak and you must offer some 200 or 300,000 and say, I leave you with this. Okay?
Yes.
So, I hear there's also 50,000. So, I think the manner in which we introduce politics to journalists, right from journalism training institutions, also affects how they then come to the newsroom and perceive politics. And leave alone the dynamics of how the politicians then perceive us as journalists, this is now a two-way. How do we orient these journalists into the profession and say, this is politics and this is how you can cover it?
Yes.
Vis-a-vis the other side also looking at us and saying, now these journalists have come. So there's a lot of stereotyping of journalists and the work that they do, and more so the female journalists. By the way, I like telling this story of how a politician one time told me, Irene, you just leave these things. Why don't you just go and cook for your husband? Leave these things. They're stressing you for nothing. And I told him clearly that, you know what, I'm still not married because I still want to grow in this profession. When I marry, then perhaps I'll consider your advice. For now, please keep it to yourself. So there are so many things happening in between that we don't understand as journalists. And I'm wondering, how do we sort of find a way of allowing journalists understand these things so they're able to package it properly and give their audiences? What Peter was talking about. If you can't package it, if you don't know how to understand it yourself, first of all, you won't know how to package it and then give it to your audience in the format and way and platforms that they require and need it.
Yes.
So press freedom, security, and politics, they're all intertwined, and you will not avoid any of them.
That's
Even
true.
when many elite Ugandans say, I would rather not get engaged or involved in politics. And then they're the ones who are every time in the garage with their cars.
Thank you.
Because of politics. They're the ones who are having to pay extra money now to put fuel in their cars because of politics. If you used to put fuel of 200,000, now you have to perhaps put 300,000 for you to go to the same destination. But that is politics. Politics happening far away from us.
Yeah.
But also politics happening here to now determine what you get to put in your car and drive from where you came to where we are right now.
Yes.
So I think it's just reorienting ourselves to understand politics, that it's part of us. Whether you're going to go to a public hospital or a private hospital, it is still politics that dictated that First Pharmacy should be where it is and Molago Hospital should be where it is. Otherwise, in a normal setting, perhaps it should not be there. You and I will agree on that, right?
Yes.
And increasingly, these things continue to happen in our eyes, and we seem to have no control over them because we are not the ones making the decisions.
No.
And unless journalists understand this, they will perhaps keep reporting about the politician so-and-so said this and glorify them even where they're not supposed to be glorified. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Politics, journalism, and academics.
Yeah, we must agree that national security is a very important subject. So journalism and national security, from my own experience, is that in the newsrooms, people know what constitutes national security. What constitutes national security? You can go and look at it and, you know. But I get a feeling that every time somebody wants to violate the rights of journalists, then they are going to invoke that mask of national security to violate the rights of journalists, either to access information or to do their work.
Yes.
And that is where the problem is that national security, the professional media platforms, the professional media newsrooms understand what constitutes national security. And in my 25 years of practice, we have already, in the processes of gatekeeping, we have always looked at all those scenarios, the legal issues, when you want to publish or to broadcast a piece of information. But I am afraid that the culture is that when somebody wants to violate the rights of journalists, then they will institute that mask of national security, and that's what we need to fight.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I think the ultimate, I think, criterion for journalists, journalist judgment is really the public interest. And I think that is really always the lens through which, you know, journalists should be, should use as their editorial lens, in making judgment. So, and the journalists, are trained, or through the experience they learn, that because editorial judgment is very much about, making those decisions, making those calls, and there is no journalist that I know who is really professional, who doesn't really take into account that what they cover has got consequences, and those consequences could be consequences on people's lives, it could be consequences for national security, and professional journalism is really very much about, making those calls, but and the public interest is not in contradiction with, concerns about, national security, and that is why I think, this whole idea that we call gatekeeping in journalism is so important, and it is really what distinguishes, a citizen journalist is what distinguishes, what Derek calls a media practitioner, someone who has got a media platform, who has got a phone, who has got a laptop, and they can gather information and put it out. Gatekeeping is really very much about, that there is a process that filters information. So as a journalist, as a newsroom, as an organized, a media institution, you develop sources that have credibility, and these sources are in business, are in the, the security institutions, and because that is really ultimately what journalism is about, that you rely on your sources to help you gain the important perspective that you need to be able to make that editorial judgment. And editorial judgment is not, it's something that you build, with experience, with exposure, with lifelong learning as a journalist. You get to understand, how important it really is to filter your information, because you also understand that there is not journalism if the security, national security, is under threat. No. How are you going to be able to practice your journalism? How are you going to be able, to thrive, in the social context, yes, where all other professions, all other occupations, all other aspects of livelihood, need a secure and stable, national environment in which to do your work. So journalists actually do understand, and they make those judgments, again, because they have access to sources. On a typical day, your job as a journalist is to cultivate, credible sources that you can go, and by the way, journalists have a lot of sources that they don't even use, that sources that they rely on in the background to help them, filter information, distill, information that ultimately ends up in what they publish or broadcast. So ultimately, I think for me it goes back to the conversation that happened in the newsroom about what is really the public interest, and that public interest is very, very important. That the journalists hold, that the leadership, really news leadership, is very, really much about making those very critical decisions to be able to separate and to understand really the consequences of everything that is going to be published. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very, very tense conversations, and I know we've been geared up to speak deep into the experiences, but now we want to leave a little bit of that and try to pick from today's topic, especially in the celebration of Dorothy, Doreen, Nalumansi, and you've spoken so much about gatekeeping, meaning, of course, we can all gather that you all experienced, you're all in training and mentorship, you're either a scholar in journalism, which means there's something that you want to be seen in the current practice of journalism, and we want to use today's Mugole, Doreen, Dorothy, Nalumansi, and ask the question: what lessons can young journalists learn from the work and career of Dorothy, Doreen, Nalumansi, but also a bigger question of what message should be sent to these young Ugandans who aspire to join journalism, which of course will also be used to maybe get more students for you guys to train into the journalists that will replace you. By the grace of God, you still have lives to live, but over time you want to better the journalism in light of all that has been spoken, and that might also be the opportunity for you to give your parting shots as we get closer to the end of the function. So Dorothy, in the light of what we have been discussing, young journalists, of course, to use her as an example, especially to the female species, but also, again, your parting shots in light of the celebration of World Press Freedom Day in conjunction with the Uganda Law Society and the journalism fraternity. Thank you.
So I think looking at Dorothy's work, and I think the message is really about build your credibility as a journalist.
Yes.
Ultimately, because we have this saying that a good journalist is an equal opportunity offender. Okay? So regardless of how you are assigned, stick to the job for which you have been assigned, Yes. Be forthright with how you are reporting. Build your credibility. You are a journalist. You are not an advocate. You are not an activist, because you remember that you are assigned, like in this particular case, to cover a political process where you are informing all participants in that political process. Yes. So be passionate about what you are doing, because you believe that it's very important work to do. And the job of journalism really is to bring out that information, bring out those facts, provide the perspective so that people can actually, and provide the necessary context, because the words that you choose, the voices that you capture, the images that you show, tell a story, and they contribute to the narrative, to the kind of narrative about the subject that you are covering. So think very deeply about how do you ensure that your credibility does not suffer as you cover political processes from whatever angle that or from whatever vantage point that you have been assigned to follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Credibility it is. Yes, please.
Thank you, moderator. I will beg that I speak to that, then I give my parting shot.
Please.
You allow me to leave because you know my arrangement.
I surely do, please.
Okay, so Dorothy, thank you for keeping the bar, including, when I talk about the bar, including the new radical bar,
the
so high.
radical new bar.
The radical new bar.
Yes.
in this context, I'm speaking about the bar for journalism. What do we learn from Dorothy is that journalism is a noble profession. It's a noble profession. It's and it is like if I was to relate it to religion, if you are a Muslim or a Christian, it's like you are the reverend, you are the priest, you are the pastor of public interest. You are the imam of public interest. So to the young people out there, the satisfaction of journalism comes from you doing a story that really gets that to help the public. So journalism is a noble profession. I want to ask young people out there, upcoming professionals, not to go away, because what I have learned in my 25 years of experience is that there is no profession that does not have challenges. Even where you run to, you will find challenges. In my other work, I manage footballers. You know, they want to run from one club to another, but the issues they run away from one club, they'll find at the other club. So it is normally better to stay home and solve the issues that are at home than trying to run away. So young people out there, journalism is a noble profession, and for the foot soldiers, the journalism in practice, the editors, everybody, please always do your best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Uncle Alex. You have done us a good service. We can excuse you with respect. You'll forgive us for stretching and entering into your schedule. But as you leave, may the Lord bless you, and may you continue to push for the rule of law and journalism, as you have said. We take your presence very importantly. God bless you. Yes, Miss Irene, you're going to speak to the ladies out there. Obviously, we can't have Miss Doreen speak on her own, and you're going to now take the mantle as you already earlier on alluded. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. So when I looked at the newsroom before I left, I was actually accused of leaving. I should have stayed, but I needed to do more than what I was doing inside one newsroom, and that is why I left in December last year. And because, again, as you see Miss Doreen Nalumansi here, there are not many women in the newsroom, for many reasons. My study, Dr. George Lugalambi, assessed factors contributing to women leaving newsrooms in Uganda. One of them is the security factor, where you're not sure when you leave your house how you're going to come back into the house, and whether your children will ask you difficult questions like mine asked, "Mommy, why were you beaten?" I don't have answers to that question. I have never been able to answer my son fully. So yes, there are women who want to join hands with Doreen here and do the amazing work that she is doing, but the fear out there is real. When I talk to journalism students, back then I used to move in crutches when I go to talk to them and train them. And then they'd all be wondering, if this is what journalism means, do I really want to be there? But of course I kept encouraging them and saying that this profession is not doomed, and it's not that every day we're going to be beaten. We're always hoping that the next government MP, I don't know, the next government, things will be better, right? If we lose hope, then we are not a generation anymore. And so covering politics is a good thing because it gives you perspective to many things. And also the fact that the woman is part of the team covering stories, there will automatically be diversity in voices. If I don't get female voices, I will be that voice as I do the narration, as I do all the other things, and show other women out there that there is a possibility in us contributing to conversations in this space. The moment we decide that because female journalists are vulnerable and are fearing, we should leave them out of covering politics, we will be missing out a lot.
And the opportunities that come with having a woman handle a story are immense. Remember when Maggie was in the newsroom? Her touch to stories, you could feel it, right? And I think there needs to be more efforts to keep more female journalists in the newsroom, but also trust them with responsibilities after empowering them. Do not push her to the front line because you want her to fail. Put her there because you want to handhold her, because you want to encourage her, but because you want her to do what any other journalist, professional journalist, would have done. There are also tendencies to say, you've sent that one. She's always in heels. Was she allowed to wear jeans and t-shirts? The stereotypes don't help us in the newsroom. And I also think the support systems around women are very important. Women, not just in the newsroom, but I think even in the legal profession. Moderator, I was talking to, I have a personal lawyer, and I was talking to him. And I was surprised to hear that you people also have issues of sexual harassment in the legal profession.
Oh, yes.
Now, what do? You sue each other? What do you do to handle these things? Because these are, again, issues pushing women away from the newsrooms.
Yeah.
Where your boss feels that every time he's talking to you, he should first come and massage your shoulders. Every time he's sending you inappropriate text messages and WhatsApp messages. These are issues that journalists are dealing with, especially female journalists.
Yes, very
and how do we navigate them to have responsible people in leadership? And not sugarcoat, and every time, because it's even in the disciplinary circles, it can be a men's setup where you hide the things. If it is the boss now, you have to hide it so that it's not seen out there that is the one harassing the younger journalists coming into the profession. And finally, from me, I think the journalists who are coming out to be like, for instance, our sister Doreen, I have realized that someone was talking about 25 years. Me, I've been in journalism for 18 years. To be in this profession, you must know who you should stay in touch with. You must know who is going to be professional and ethical with you. You must discern certain people from your space and in your life. And most importantly, you must know that your work is not just story counts for you to get paid at the end of the month, but your work touches lives and livelihoods. And sometimes someone's life is going to be changed because you ethically did your work, or you professionally did your work as a journalist. As opposed to, let me write very fast so I can have 3 stories in a day. But we don't have depth in your story. We can't understand what exactly you're writing apart from saying, Derek said, Dr. Lugambi said. So what if they said? And some people think that question is rude when you ask, so what? It's not rude. It's just asking you to go deeper and give us perspective. So I thank you, and I hope that we will also have answers from you people where you have sexual harassment as an issue in your profession. God bless you.
That's not the topic of the day. We shall avoid that angle, but let's first concentrate today. Thank you.
Every good journalist, every journalist is just as good as a gatekeeper. And Dr. Lugarambi has spoken fervently about gatekeeping. Gatekeeping comes with a lot. Gatekeeping comes with rubbing shoulders wrongly with the reporters. Gatekeeping comes rubbing shoulders wrongly with the authorities, but also the people who are going to receive the news. Gatekeeping is a very key role in journalism. That it's not just about Dorothy going to the field and having that video come out there. It's about where has she shot the video from, how has it been edited, how is it being shared to the people. And that's what gatekeeping is. Every journalist is just as good as a gatekeeper, as the gatekeeper. So if you have a bad gatekeeper, your journalism is going to crumble. I want to encourage people who have come up with media houses to take the aspect of gatekeeping very highly. At NewsSwift, we have almost 60% of our staff female. And as a gatekeeper, you struggle on how to convince someone that this story you've written is inappropriate. And probably you don't even have enough time to make sure that these stories are being done in the right way. So you end up concentrating on some people who are doing well,
the right thing.
encourage the others to look at these people's work before they write, or before they go out to source for information. Because of the shrinkness of the newsroom and stuff like that. It's a very big problem in Uganda. I read so many websites, and right from the headline, very wrong grammar. You read the intro, it has nothing to do with marrying the headline to the intro. Nothing, everything is in their own world. And I feel this is not a problem of even the writer. I think it's the problem of the gatekeeper. We need to encourage good gatekeeping for us to get good journalists like Doreen. And Dorothy, you are as good as your last byline. You are as good as your last video. What that means is that after we have celebrated you today, let me hope tomorrow you're going to tell me, yes, I'm an award winner. Do you think I'm going to go to the field again? I finished. No, it only starts, you know. The idea of consistency, the idea of yearning to learn shouldn't end today. Many people have showered you with all superlatives, but that's just to encourage you to do even better tomorrow. Probably if we had, maybe if I had listened and taken in superlatives, I would have stopped writing in 2017, because that's when I got my first award. And it was a very big award on an investigation I did. But that encouraged me to do even better stories. And yes, congratulations to you, Dorothy. And I want to tell you that tomorrow you have to go to the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And finally, Mosei.
Thank you, there. Okay, let me just thank you again. I don't know if I can be giving more compliments than the husband, but I would say that Dorothy, Doreen, Nalumansi, it could also become a brand, DDN. You know? So in the future, people will have your bottles DDN.
Okay.
You know, and you make your own merchandising. This is DDN.
Okay.
You know? Now, I think journalism comes also with a talent. And I think it's like entrepreneurs. A lot of people think they can be entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs also needs a nose for business. It comes like a talent. And journalists also, you have to be able to be very socializing with people, to ask the right questions, to be a bit of a lawyer attitude, to ask the right questions and to gain the confidence of your source. And if this is not, if you are too cold and too ice, you cannot break the ice. I mean, this is definitely a talent which is needed. And then, of course, why should people become a journalist? Because, I mean, lawyers normally, and this is why I found it at the end a bit boring, you go there, people come to you, or I come to you, and you have a case, and you solve the case, and then, yes, but it's not very creative somehow. A journalist, it's different. We have seen very good journalists in the world, and they let me use some modern words, maybe if it's not correct, you tell me, but journalists can influence. You can become an influencer. And if few people follow you, then you have followers. I mean, this is a new term which I would use for journalists. You can become a very strong influencer by the credibility of your action and by your authenticity about your honesty, and then you have followers. And these followers, while you may not get probably out of this country somehow because you want to live here, want to stay here, you can still shape your country somehow, you know, and to be influencer. And I think this is a huge task and a big mandate. Beside just, I mean, of course, getting into this rough things. There are a lot of other topics. And then just to finish something, you know, when Irene was talking about politics, you know, in the newsroom, they don't want to talk, you know, do the politics. Once I was working in Islamabad and for USID, and the chief of, we were an Australian, an UK guy, me as German, and a US lady. And then suddenly the COP came in our house and said, please guys, don't talk about politics. So what? So what? Yeah. Don't talk about politics. Yeah. I mean, maybe he was, let's say, from the terminology of USID, he was probably right. We should not fight about politics, but what else? I mean, about food, about, anyways, you see, I fully understand you. Everything is somehow politics, isn't it? So I want to make you an offer today because I really like this this event very much. I will be flying home probably soon, and I will talk to a big German media house. Maybe they can also look if they can open an academy of journalism here or a school of journalism, and investing in this kind of profession. So let me try this. I have been working for some newspapers as a lawyer in Hamburg, and we have very big media houses there, and maybe they would be really interested to say, okay, let's bring some professionalism and opening an academy of journalism in Uganda. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. A round of applause for the panel discussionists who have helped us to unpack all that information in relation to our theme for the day, but also in celebration of DDN, who this time round is going to be termed as DDN. We shall leave the nitty-gritty for Mr. Wandera. That is different. We shall not get there. But yes, DDN, that's how we're going to call you for today. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We've had a very, very sentimental moment in regard to celebrating you, but also in representation of the ladies in the journalism fraternity. And Miss Irene did not do anything less. She has done a lot. Thank you so much for your presence here. We really appreciate you, Doctor. We can't say much because you have spoken from your heart and you're giving very radical, because you're the radical newbie. I want to imagine you've been radical enough and to support the cause. And Derek, thank you so much for being behind such a powerful lady. This time round you're behind, I want to imagine, because we are celebrating her, but also we know that your mentorship that you began with in your speech helped so much for her to get to here. And 2017 when you got your award and you're still raising people, that I think speaks into what exactly you've said. And Mr. Peter, that Journalism Academy, we would like to appreciate. It is it's a gesture, and we're imagining that you have already done enough research about it, but this Uganda Law Society is in the habit of partnerships. So we welcome you to continue to deliberate about the same thing, but we also hope that it will be a good thing for the country and for Africa and of course the world at large in regard to the journalism fraternity. Even when of course you are a lawyer, it speaks a lot into how we can marry the two different professions. And of course we've just heard that journalism is a noble profession. We wanted to know whether it comes before the law or after the law, but it's for another day. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to also recognize the presence of Isano Francis, who we all know and doesn't need recognition or reintroduction. He has been, of course, at the forefront, one of the foot soldiers, as we all know, for so many things that happened to him in the course of his journalism and activities, something that would also require celebrating. When we did so last year, we also recognized his presence and also those people who have stood out. One of the people that have stood out in journalism, who of course go out there and put your leg, put your hand and go to hospital, you're bedridden for the work that you're doing. Not something very, very proud to be a Ugandan at that moment, but you have stood the test, and we would like to give you flowers as the Uganda Law Society for the work that you've done and the work you continue to do. And we continue to pray that the Lord will bless all journalists here, those that are intending to be journalists, those that are in practice, and those that have the heart for Uganda. May the Lord be with you. And DDN, thank you so much for what you've done. You have raised the bar so high, both the bar at the Radical New Bar and also the bar within the journalism fraternity. We would like to thank you so much. Giving you a round of applause wouldn't be so much. We'd like to thank you so much once again and welcome the Acting Secretary General, that is Mr. Babu Sali, who is also in representation of the Radical New Bar Governing Council, to give us closing remarks. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Robert. In a special way, I wish to once again thank all the panelists who have sacrificed their time to come and honor this 13th R&B live series organized by the Radical New Bar Governing Council of the Uganda Law Society. In a special way, I also wish to congratulate Miss Doreen Nalumansi on the achievement, and as the husband stated, as they introduced you people here, you should not use this award as probably a factor that deters you from being determined going forward, or one that will give you senior status at your place of work and you really desist from going down to the mud and capturing all the nasty events that were in relation to human rights violations as you've been doing. This should rather give you the courage and should push you forward, because a recognition is not one to push you into retirement, but one that gives you zeal, one that gives you commitment, courage to actually push more and achieve more in life. This should be a stepping stone, that the future is clear, and with the commitment that you have, you will not only end at this, but greater things are coming ahead. And this is a country that we live in, one that we always watch human rights violations, and it is only the media that can come out and speak both in context, in word and in photo, where majority of us do not get to go. So if we do not watch what we watch from the media, we'll have nothing to say. And if a person in the media gets a shot of human rights violation and is either intimidated or they fear to bring it up to the public, then majority will not know. It is something that will be watched, and it ends with that media personnel who has recorded it. In a special way, once again, want to thank you and congratulate you on achieving the same. And I also, in a special way, want to thank Mr. Peter for the insightful discussions that he has had here, together with the other panelists, that is Ms. Abalo and Dr. George Lugarambi, whereas I was not here physically, I was following from the boardroom because of the space, that is one, and then I also had an assignment that I was handling on a personal level. The Radical New Bar and the Uganda Law Society is delighted that you spared your time and came to this public engagement, because under our mandate of the Uganda Law Society Act, that is section 3E and 3E and D, we have the mandate towards the public, and this is one of the public engagements that we created as the Radical New Bar Governing Council of the Uganda Law Society, starting from February 2025 moving forward, so that we have these kind of discussions where we do not only offer our services to the members of our fraternity, but even the public. And I'm sure for those who have followed, they have learned or picked a lot from this discussion. Thank you all for sparing your time, and we are really grateful as the Uganda Law Society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'd like to kindly invite you to the front to take a group picture for posterity purposes. Mr. Arthur, please join us. DDN, please join us. And your colleagues I can see over there, if they don't mind, you can come around. Adam, may you kindly join us and take this picture. Thank you.